You are listening to the Savage FINcast, episode 125, an Erik Larsen interview.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast, the show that longs for the days of the NES cavemen. My name is Jim Purcell.
I'm Craig Olsen.
I'm Raven Perez.
And we are on again for another episode of the Savage FINcast, the internet's only Erik Larsen Savage Dragon-based podcast. We're going to keep this really brief because we have for you this episode a massive, epic-length, novel-length interview with the man Erik Larsen himself. Where we take a very in-depth chit-chat about events in Savage Dragon 263 and 264. Two very momentous issues, one slightly more momentous than the others perhaps, but we're not going to delay. We're going to go right into it. You're not even going to hear my co-host voice. We're going right now into the interview. And we are joined by Erik Larsen once again. We have kind of a, because of the kind of the importance of the latest issue of the Savage Dragon, we thought it was important to get Erik's first-hand comments on it. As for all of us, we're so impressed with Savage Dragon 264. We just really just wanted to pick your brains about it.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Right. Sure. I got it out in front of me so I can be reminded of what the hell I did.
So, should we talk 263 since we haven't talked about that first before we jump into 264, or would that be too much to ask?
63. All right.
Because I feel like,
what the hell happened there?
For us,
the murderous menace of Mako.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think I counted. It was 231 days between 262 and 263, and we were so stoked to get 263.
That is so. It's so many days in there. I was like, I think I'm done. I think I've said it. I think I'm just not going to do anymore. That's it. It's over. And it's not happening. Okay, a little weird to leave it here, but there we go.
Was that a serious thought?
Oh yeah. That's every month.
Really?
30 years.
I felt like for as long as that period was, and it got a little scary, when 263 appeared, it was like you didn't miss a beat, though. It felt like one of the, I don't know, it's something about an issue with Mako that always makes a terrific issue, especially when it's a one-on-one fight with Malcolm.
Yeah,
do you feel that way?
On him, I was like, God, I remember why I killed him. I can only draw his head from a select few angles, or he looks just really retarded. He just looks
he's like a sphere on legs from certain angles.
What the hell is this guy? What is this all about?
It's funny because
back in any form.
When you go back and look at Mako and the Ajax comics issues, he's really kind of funky looking too. There, it looks like a dolphin or something on the side.
So there's so many of those appearances. I mean, you can look for isolated panels and in all other appearances where you're he just looks like the wimpiest possible dude. Like when he is hanging out with Dart on their little Love Ya Island, whatever the hell it was. Or just like there's something sitting all mopey, and it's like, I could take you at this point.
But I think that's what's amazing about the character, like a shark guy that kind of look somehow you get these expressions out of him that are pretty cool. And I guess I know you're saying you have trouble drawing him, but it doesn't come off that way at all when you look at these issues. It's just fantastic action. It's something about a hulking guy with shark teeth, battling.
And I don't think Mako looking vulnerable at times is a weakness. I think it's actually makes his character.
All right. You guys win.
So
Glad
unkill him again, and we'll try again.
I'll just have to have somebody else get that blood. Okay. He's got more blood. We can just pass that out like Halloween candy.
It is pretty fun seeing him like in the water. Was that like a choice to really like push that to get like the shark in the water look, like kind of in the Atlantis arc where he was, taking out the Atlantean and flying around underwater? That was cool. But to see him here, it's almost like Jaws coming out of the water.
Jaws, baby.
There's
cool.
There's a rip-off panel from Jaws.
Really?
Yeah, where all the people are running towards shore.
Yeah.
That's just a photo from Jaws.
Is it really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
It's like I've got to incorporate this. We got a shark guy fighting in the water. Let's just do that. So, yeah, every now and then I'm like, I got to work this in. Nobody will get this but me, but it makes me that.
I don't know. I think people have heard of Jaws.
No one's going to realize he's swiping.
Nobody, I don't know, they will go like, wait a minute, this picture, this seems eerily familiar. I think maybe if you stumbled across the still sometime later, you'd be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, I told the boys when we did that review, I was like, guys, we're getting a fucking Mako Jaws scene. I was like, this is fantastic. It's been 30 years and you've resisted the temptation, and then right there at the end, you pulled the trigger.
Here we go.
Fantastic.
And we got Mako with the fin.
Mako with the fin. Finally. There it is.
I gotta say that bit where Amy like puts her fist through his eye and then he rips her arm off with his eye, and that's what gets the blood in him. That's pretty wild, man.
Yeah. Hey, kids, comics.
I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of other people do stuff like that. They're weak.
Yeah. What are you guys even doing?
I've noticed with like the newer issues that your ink lines, I feel like you've gotten a little tighter and thicker with your inks. Is that kind of a reflection of what you're doing with Ant, with being more loose and thinner and just kind of playing off the two things, or is why the change kind of?
Part of this issue was drawn on a tablet.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, I got a Wacom tablet, and I was like, I started on Ant, like the new issue of Ant had so much stuff that was directly out of Savage Dragon. I was like, so I need to re-ink this whole thing in this other style. This is going to be a huge pain in the ass. I had to blow everything up to the right size and then trace it off, and it's got to be on a white box. And I was like, or I could just use this dead line here on this and buzz on through here and see how that goes. And so the new Ant issue 6, page 1 was drawn on the boards, and pages 2 through 20 were all just me re-inking it on the tablet, because it's like I can use a dead line here. It's super easy. I don't have to do thick and thin except for when I'm filling in blacks.
Huh.
Let's see how that goes.
Well, I don't think any of us noticed
No, I had no idea.
I think it's less noticeable in Ant and a little more in Savage Dragon if your attention is called to it, because there's some stuff where, especially when you get to some background characters going, wow, those background characters look really thoroughly done and really complete considering how tiny they are.
Well, that's the thing about digital inking, is that you can zoom in and get that detail
Yeah,
where you
can just
normally
keep
can't.
zooming in. So it's like going, oh, I really should have a panel where people are being loaded onto an ambulance. Like, I'll just do that. It's really tiny in this panel, how people being loaded into an ambulance. You can tell that it's there, but it's so small. And if I was doing that on actual paper, it would be difficult. So.
Now, the only thing I thought might be digital was some of the speed lines and on some of the pages. They looked a little digital, but no, nothing else jumped out at me. Fascinating.
Yeah, you can. I don't know if you can look through it and be like, oh, it's right here. Right here is where it goes from this to that. The speed lines are it's kind of the same as I do it regularly, because I'm just using I just use a ruler on here, because I don't know how any of this stuff is supposed to work. So I'm still like on Photoshop. So I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm going to put a vanishing point over here and get out my frickin' T-square and use it on my Quake compound. It's like an idiot. Like, no, there's all sorts of these cool tools you could use and different programs. Like, fuck, you're talking to a caveman. I don't know anything about this stuff other than press it and make it go. So there's a bunch of like stupid in-joke things that I was able to do because it was digital, because you can just drag things on and then draw on top of them. So like when Jackson is making that sandcastle.
Oh, the Dr. Doom's castle.
Dr. Doom's sandcastle.
I actually recognized it because John Byrne had done the same thing, probably traced it, but I was like, that has to be Kirby. But I found that John Byrne, I was looking at it, I was like, that has to be Dr. Doom's castle. Like, there's no way it's not.
Yeah, it's just like exactly his castle. So
Eagle Eye Craig called that. Like, he was like, it's got to be Dr. Doom's.
Yeah, it's like, here's a little joke for you.
We hadn't noticed that anything was digital, but the one thing that we had noticed is that it did seem like some of the supporting cast, and you mentioned this yourself already, so I'm just saying, but like there's a police officer, and just like that guy, he doesn't have Larsen face. He's not like just a Larsen throwaway face. I feel like he used a photo reference on that one guy's face. What was that? The cop in the 263.
Oh, no, that's me ripping off something else, and that was drawn. Those guys at the very beginning where they're going, there's no one here, streets deserted. That is ripped off directly from Fantastic Four #1.
Awesome.
So there's two panels.
The one with the cop on the bottom.
Panel 2 where there's cops, then there's like a off-panel gun being held, and they're looking around, and then that shot of the two cops at the bottom, that's like right out of FF1. I was just...
Yeah, that cop looks like old school Kirby. Like, yeah.
Kirby. So, yeah, for whatever reason, I just thought that corny dialogue of something strange is going on. It's like, chef's kiss, this old crap Stanley stuff. It's just, it's just straight out of that. Just... Again, I am amusing myself.
This Jeremiah Youngblood guy, he's a pretty cool looking character. Looks like a mix between Dum Dum Dugan, Cable, I don't know, Nick Fury kind of guy. Naming him Jeremiah Youngblood, I gotta imagine there's some kind of intent to kind of tie it in with Youngblood or something, or no?
Yeah, kind of, because I'd had characters say in the past, like when Rob lost Youngblood and it was given to somebody else, I was like, I'm going to find a way to use Youngblood in my book, but I'm going to make it just like he's a guy. For early, like way earlier when Captain Tootsie shows up, they keep mentioning Youngblood in that story, like Youngblood sent me or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, at that point in my head, he's a guy. And
Okay.
I was gonna have like in the next issue, like Youngblood's coming. Next issue, Youngblood. And it just happened to be like this dude shows up. Like, what the hell?
That's great.
That would be great. The last panel, like next issue, enter Youngblood.
Oh, hi, Youngblood.
And he comes walking in. Hey, gang. But yeah, it's another stupid thing that. Oh, this is funny to me.
Does
Well,
that
it's
mean
funny to
we're-
us too.
All
Yeah.
I do at this point is just indulge my own inner child.
Does that mean we're gonna see more of him, or is it kind of just?
I expect so. I expect that he'll be something of a presence. Like he'll be probably the dude that Malcolm reports to when down the line.
It was noticeable that
How much do I spoil all this like upcoming crap?
don't spoil it. It's fine.
I mean, it's kind of with covers that have already been out there.
Right.
And this sets it up like, hey, Malcolm's going to be moving. So
Yeah, I mean, we've got some serious like cover reveals over the last month.
I don't know if we want to spoil it for the listeners. It's up to you.
Well, we're not gonna talk the details of the contents. I'm just saying that we got the move to San Francisco. We got the wedding. All that stuff's out there.
Yeah, I mean, she's first. Angel's been engaged for frickin' ever. So having that be a wedding was like, all right, it's about goddamn time.
And that's in 266 was the solicitation for that?
267.
267.
266 is
the move, right?
The move. So, yeah, so that...
Yeah, 265 is the one with Samurai giving its Malcolm in the nuts.
Right.
Yeah, on the cover.
Yeah.
There's no nut punch in the actual interior of the comic.
Oh,
Sorry to say.
What a ripoff. A cover that doesn't portray what happens on the inside?
in comics?
What?
I know. And he's not wearing the same sweater either. It's just one crushing disappointment after another.
It does seem like, at least with the these two issues coming out month to month, 263, 264. Seems like 265 is coming right along, and then you've got the solicitations for the next two issues. It seems like you're back, like on a roll. Is that?
Yeah, kicking ass.
I'm hoping that is the case. We'll see how it goes, because I'm kind of on again, off again in terms of doing it digitally or doing it on paper or whatever. Because there's just certain things like. The next issue, whatever it is, 264 was all digital, except I was pulling things in from various comics and then making adjustments to them, because there are a bunch of things in there where I want this to seem like this scene from this issue. The best way to do that is to have it be that shot, but change Dragon's fin to that little turd that he's got. So that when you're reading it and you're familiar with the other stuff, your brain goes, this seems familiar. This is where these events in these two different worlds kind of come together and become one. I get it. That makes some sense.
It's pretty amazing that you did kind of all those big childhood scenes already in Savage Dragon. So when you did this issue, it is familiar, and so you do get that idea that these events have happened across realities, just in a little bit different ways, and having those callbacks really emphasize that. That was really fun. Just kind of picking out those swipes and being like, I know where that's from. Like, I've seen that before.
Yeah. It was fun to do. but there's so much stuff that I could not possibly get around to squeezing in here because it just, I was, especially towards the end, it's like, and Angel's an adult, and
well, since we kind of
just covered 20 years in this page.
Since we were jumping into 264, can you talk about some of those things that hit the cutting, that got cut off? And
a lot of it just ended up being cut out because it was like, what does this add to the overall story here? Like, we know, having read Graphic Fantasy 1 and 2, we know that Mako is a good guy in there. So do I do stuff where, let me establish that Dragon fought Mako when he was kind of first got to be Mako and was kind of a bad guy, and they were up on a building and kicking the crap out of each other, and then they made friends later on, and then here's this big shark buddy pal. Do I do that? Does that add anything? I don't even know. There was some stupid story I had where Rock decided he was hot for Dragon's lady, and they swapped brains. And it was such a bunch of stupidity.
Sounds awesome.
It's like, okay, maybe I could do something there, but it also got so much of the stuff I just don't remember at all. And so it's really frustrating when I'm trying to put this together, because there's stuff where I'm going, I don't remember for sure who Dragon's second son's mother is. I don't remember who that was. Did he get some other girlfriend? Was it the same one? And I don't remember why. I remember that Fonte decided to age up his first kid,
right?
And the whole bit of him walking out going, "I'm a boy," was right out of my old comics.
Fantastic.
What I don't remember is why they got to be adults later on. I think it was just, I want to do more superheroes. Let's just turn these guys into adults now for no reason. But I don't remember. Probably Fonte was involved because he's involved in every lazy thing that I ever wanted to do.
Well, it is something I noticed is that Fonte seems to be a lot more important in this version of the universe, which I like, because we all like more Fonte in our lives.
Yeah, and he's a lot shorter too, and that doesn't make any goddamn sense. But it was like, wow, that's the way he did him back in the day. Looked kind of like a Jawa, even though I don't think Jawas were a thing yet when I was doing that.
I thought he looked a bit like the Time Trapper, honestly, and other cloaked dark figures.
Whatever. Yeah, I don't know where a lot of this stuff comes from. I know there's a lot of characters that I forgot because I just don't remember what they look like, and I didn't have any record of them, and that became a real problem.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of all this, is that you don't have your old comics to reference, so it's all from memory.
I have none of that, so it was a real problem because I was like, I know I did like 55 comics in this particular series that I'm mostly referencing. I ignored all the Deadly Duo stuff because Deadly Duo had their own series that was probably did 15 Deadly Duo comics before, whatever. And those were all lost.
So, what was your age between, doing the Sergeant Marvel greatest comics or whatever? What was the span of your age? Like, when did you start? When did you kind of?
I was in 5th grade is where I really went gung-ho into doing this. I had done a little bit prior to that when I was living up in Washington. We moved down to California, and I just had nothing to do. We just had bought a plot of land, and we totally were hippieing it. My dad had built his own funky house in the woods, and it was just stretched plastic and boards and stuff. And it was just the most ill-conceived anything. So I was like, fuck, I got nothing else to do. I'm going to make some comics. So I just went whole hog into that and started to just, I didn't know that really series had issues 1 and 2 and 3. That was lost to me. So like my first comic I did was, it's Dragon number 53.
Just mimicking real life.
Yeah, and then I did a Powerhouse comic. I know I had done a 1 issue of Super Fantastic Hero Teams, so there was one of those, which was almost exclusively Origins. And every story was basically somebody being a fuck up, and then Fonte going, "Hey, you like superpowers?" Okay. And then bam, now you do. So it's like Steve Williamson. I'm a football player. I got completely mangled. Oh, I'm never playing football again. And then Fonte comes along. What about now? Zippity bop. It's like, oh, now he's Zeke and he's a big, huge guy. Oh, I think I'll play football. It's like, that's your story? Okay, that's cool.
Well, I think Craig or Raven brought this up in our last episode, that it kind of, Fonte giving all these people powers is kind of similar to what the creator did, or Johnny Redbeard and all them, that you kind of did revisit that, only from like the villain's perspective.
Yeah, there's that. And it's obviously he's my stand-in for Shazam, who gave Billy Batson powers. But mostly it was just my loathing of origin stories.
Oh yeah, just a big waste of time. Why can't everyone just wake up in a burning field?
It's magic.
It's like, come on, man. Nobody cares. I mean, most origins are stupid. There's like a handful that are really character-defining origins where you go, oh, Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered. That's super important. You know, Spider-Man bitten by a radioactive spider. But it's like, does it really matter how Electro got his powers? Not really. All we need to know is that dude's firing electricity around, and, you know, whatever. How he got to be is kind of the least important part. But we kind of dwell on all these origins of all these characters, and quite often those origins are pretty dumb. So let's just cut to the chase. We got a big shark guy showing up. What's he all about? He's wanting to bite some people. Oh, who'd expect that?
You know, it is kind of a thing where most of the characters in Savage Dragon we meet are already like established. You know, they've already got their powers. They've already got their costumes. Just roll with it. You don't even need to go back.
Yeah, mostly with Mako, I want to know what was up with that original getup of his where he had big old cables going over his arm. Like,
what do the pipes mean?
Did that serve any useful function? And
it was the 90s.
It did. You gave poor Sam Keith hell. In his entire Mako, like there's not a similar Mako from page to page, and it's the coils. They come on, they come off. Sometimes they're everywhere, sometimes they're real tight.
It was just supervillain fashion, man. Those guys had to be flashy in the 90s, and then, you know,
you gotta look cool.
They got older and more mature, and they decided they didn't need that.
I'm just going to wear a pair of brown trousers and some
found Namor's underwear.
Yeah. Namor's underwear.
So just kind of a follow-up on that, like what I've been curious about was, so you're starting these comics in 5th grade. You've done like 40 or 50 of them. What's the time span on that? Are you drawing your own kind of 8.5 by 11 comics all the way into your teens and then jump into doing your self-published Ajax graphic fantasy?
Yeah, like graphic fantasy is when that's over. I don't think I did any of those 8.5 by 11 things after that. Maybe one, but I think I was done. I think it was like, all right. I'm in the big time now.
So some of those comics towards the end are like graphic fantasy style, like that level of artistry. Like you're
Except
really improved.
Yeah, they were much improved.
Oh man, it's such a bummer. I wish we could see
They were
them.
all drawn in pencil form. Nothing was inked, although there was a couple issues in the middle there where I did it in ballpoint pen for whatever reason. But most of them were 8.5 by 11. Initially, I would just staple them up and then just start drawing them. And the comics, as I went through the comic, the front would get more and more bent and mangled and terrible. So by the time I got to the end, like the last couple pages were pristine, and the rest of it was just this curled wad of paper.
Oh, you were stapling them before you started drawing them.
Yeah, like an idiot. Like I had no idea. And then my buddy Aaron Katz, when he was making comics, he would draw them and then staple them, and I was like, "Oh, genius! I got to do that. That's the way to go." So yeah, once that trick showed up, then everything was awesome.
Were you
like, I was 100 pagers like that? It was,
right?
Just getting torqued. They were in terrible shape. And at some point, I went in and gave a lot of my old comics new covers because the covers were just these rags. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing.
That's how you learn.
Yeah, and I wish I could remember it all. It's infuriating to me that I couldn't remember more of what I did. Because I know at one point Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics became a reprint mag for like 10 issues in a row, where I was just like, I'll just take this comic that was Dragon number 63 and make it an issue. Now I'll take this Powerhouse and make it an issue. But I'm sitting here now going, well, what were the other issues? Because that's 2, and I thought that there was like 10 of them.
Well, and who were you doing it for? You doing it because you just wanted to draw a new cover? Because they're all personal comics.
Yeah, no, I just was. It's sort of what Savage Dragon has become, where it's just my dumping ground for every comic, anything that I do. It's like, it'll eventually show up in Savage Dragon. You like that miniseries? It'll eventually be I'll have to do another 100-pager at one point, and I'll just drop all the Deadly Duo stuff. Don't worry, it'll be there.
Did you ever get it like how to draw comics the Marvel way, or is everything just kind of self-taught from looking at comics?
I had that eventually, and then it was like, oh, you draw them big. That makes a lot more sense.
The epiphany.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
All this stuff. It's all this learning process of figuring this stuff out. I don't know how to letter. Oh, you do it like that? Oh, it's weird.
When you've been drawing Dragon right along for whatever the past 30 years, are there times where you're drawing something and like you remember something from your old comics where you're like, oh shit, like I like a memory comes back or something that you feel you need to write down, or is it kind of at this point?
I mean, I've tried to make a list of, I did a number of 1 through 55 of that book and tried to fill in all the stuff. It's so sad.
Yeah.
It's just, there are just huge gaps where I'm like, I don't remember what happened here at all. I kind of remember some of the Deadly Duo stuff a little bit, because that was like a team-up book where every issue was, they had some guest star, and they would it would just be mayhem. Because it was like, hey, the Hulk shows up. How's it going, Hulk? And whatever.
So what I'm curious about is that you say you don't remember a lot. Many details are lost, but I'm curious. Was William being found in a burning field always there, or was that something you added to this one just to call it back to the origin of Dragon?
It wasn't. Yeah, there was no William in a burning field. But if you look at Graphic Fantasy number 1, in that swirly memory thing, there's a tiny little picture of Dragon like waking up in a hospital with his head on a pillow going, oh, what's going on here? And he's got a bandage across his forehead. So I was, and I knew that I had the dragon from a red planet when I initially started. So at some point I did have that idea that
the alien origin.
Dragon's an alien and he doesn't know it, and he woke up in a hospital. So I didn't have the burning field, but I did have the hospital. And it's all so lost to me at this point. It's too bad because it had been years since I had looked at those comics because there was no reason to look at them. I was sitting there doing Spider-Man or doing whatever. So probably the last time I really like intensely was giving a shit about him and looking at him was when I was working on graphic fantasy. So that would have been when I was 19. So, 10 years later is when Image starts. I'm 29. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, it's been 10 years. So like, oh, what can you remember of those? And so on.
And when was the fire? Was
that
after
the fire
Image?
Was 91.
So just before Image. So all that stuff was already gone. I see.
Yeah, so everything's gone. I had given my dad copies of stuff as I was doing it. So he had graphic fantasy. He had all the Spider-Man stuff and Doom Patrol and all that. So once the fire came about, he was like, "You want these?" And I'm like, oh, yes, I would. So there were some of that. And I got copies of some stuff from other places too. I don't remember.
Well, this sort of dovetails. I was going to say this sort of dovetails into your recovery of this other Dragon, Paul Dragon story the other day. Although it is a story that you have reprinted in the past, it is that you have recovered the original art for it, which must be really nice.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I had forgotten that Paul Curtis still had it. And then Paul passed away recently, and then his sister was like, "Hey, you want this?" Oh, hell yeah!
That's pretty amazing that she looked you up to get it back to you.
Yeah, it was nice, because I've known her and I've known her brother for quite a while, because I was doing fanzines, and Paul Curtis was a big fanzine guy. He had done these mini comics, and he had gotten tons of people to do mini comics for him, and he had published those and was sending them out via the mail, and I bought a set from him. And he was going to do this book called Plenty-O Comics and get a bunch of people to contribute to it, and I was one of those who was going to contribute to it. So I did a 10-page story for him. But they're tiny. They're really, the original art is just minute. And I hadn't really realized how small it was till it was sent back, and I was like, "Ooh, this page is less than the size of a comic book."
Well, each page was like a half page. Was it intended to be printed in that format?
Yeah, because they were like mini comics. So you don't draw mini comics the size of a regular art. Everything would get lost. So you'd draw them really tiny so that when they were shrunk down, they still were semi-legible.
And just for the listener, this is the Angel-Fueled Quake kind of short story, which you've printed a couple of times, at least the backup once in the Savage Dragon Archives mini-series you put out. Was it called Archives? Savage
Dragon? It was in Savage Dragon Archives. It was also in The Dragon, that 5-issue mini-series. I don't remember which issue it ended up in. And then it was also in Dragon, I want to say 179. Something like that.
So you definitely had clean kind of either scans or copies, but not
copies somehow. I'd also done a story for another guy, another fanzine guy, and I don't know that it was ever published. And it was a dragon story, and I think it was super short. I think it was like 5 pages, and I think he has the art too. But getting it back from him has been. I'll pester him every now and then on Facebook, and he'll be like, all right, I'll look for it, and then never does.
So that's something that you've never printed before. You don't have copies of.
Yeah, I don't have copies of it at all. So
man,
I don't, and it's
Holy Grail.
I think it's really dumb. I think the story is basically, here's why Dragon's girlfriend's tits aren't drawn so big anymore.
Jesus.
I mean, it was really like me being my inner Roy Thomas. Like, let me explain this thing that
nobody asked for it.
I'm an idiot.
That makes me want to read it more.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's really the kind of thing that you want to print just to show people that no, I have gotten better. Look, this is how bad it was. So yeah, if this ever shows up, I'll just be like, please don't judge, but I actually committed this to paper when I was 19 years old.
So
there was a miniseries that Eclipse had put out one point called Giant Size Mini Comics.
Right.
And Paul Curtis put together one of those issues. He put together issue 4 of that. And I did a 1-page dragon thing for him.
Yeah. You've reprinted that too, I think, right?
Yeah, I printed that too. But in that, there's a panel which is a bunch of my characters going, because the story was basically Dragon bugging me going, hey, when are you going to give me my own book? And then at the end of it, I'm like, gotta go, and just kind of ditched him. And then I go into another room, and there's a million of my other characters going, hey, when am I getting my own book? And that was the punchline.
Was breaking the
panel ended up being super helpful because I was just examining it with blowing it up, going, oh, that character, I'd forgotten completely about that. And there was one character called Android Man who I had drawn his head in that shot, and I had drawn his body in a graphic fantasy. So I was able to go, oh, I can put this guy back together again.
Is that the robot with the big head and the reptile eyes?
Robot guy that's running around with those guys, and I have no idea what he's about.
Yeah, he's Android.
What about that like Superman looking guy with the curly Q like logo on his chest?
Yeah, that was Miniman. And I would do
Miniman.
Me and my buddy Chris Vito would do Miniman comics because they were super tiny. We did super tiny Miniman comics to go with him being a mini character. And I don't even remember it. I just saw that he was flying with somebody in giant size mini comics. And so I'm just guessing that it's, mini girl or mini skirt or something. I don't know.
Mini skirt.
What about that size shifting like woman with the afro? Does she have a name?
She was just, I think she was just Giant Girl.
Giant Girl.
Yeah. So, I mean, super lame. A lot of characters were lame. I think this blonde woman was called Black Cat, which makes no sense. I don't know that her costume was originally white like that, but I don't remember what color it was. In fact, I only know what her mask looked like because she was in that group shot. So I just made up a costume for her here, basically thinking she probably looks something like this. I mean, that's a kind of crappy costume I would have come up with then, so I'll do that. And that's too much of this is me just going, I know these details need to be filled in. So I'm filling them in now because I'm never going to get access to more information. My memory's never going to get any better. Like Half Man, I don't really know what he looks like. other than he was in the center spread of Graphic Fantasy, but he was cropped, so I didn't see what the rest of his costume looked like. So I just made up some crappy 5th grade.
There's that panel in Graphic Fantasy where they're all watching the projector, so you got like a million little heads, and you can be like,
yeah, it's like, oh, something. There it is. The flame. I got to do something with the flame. Like,
that's the fire guy, I assume, the Human Torch. Then
I think everybody had a Human Torch ripoff character.
Major Victory. That was like that female Asgardian looking character, right? Is that, or no?
Yeah, she was really invented at the real tail end. There was issue 50 of Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics. That was when I was like, I'm going to make there be 3 different complexes with 3 different dragons running each of them. And then each of the teams going to have like 1 million guys. And then I was like, why don't I have 1 million guys? So I better come up with a bunch more. So that was when I invented Horridus right around that time, because we had this big encyclopedia kind of book, and I was looking through there for anything. It's like, oh, here's a lizard that's a horned lizard called Horridus something or other. Was it scientific? I'll use the Horridus part and make her look like this. So
great visual though.
There were some others that were based on dinosaurs and just stupid stuff.
Is that guy with the red cape? I think I see him in Graphic Fantasy. He's got like kind of a bird beak or something. I don't know. Like he's got some weird like dark nose.
That was sort of a Robin type for Sergeant Marvel being a Batman type. Black beak.
Black beak.
Dumbest possible guy. Like Mental Man shows up in here, and I don't remember what he looks like at all.
You just remember the name.
I just go. I kind of remember that he was orange, but I just don't remember that well as to what he looked like. So I know they fought him. I knew that was important because that was when he and Star met. So I got to use him. But like even in that was like the first issue of Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics was those guys came together. And then the backup story, they fought Candyman. But Candyman was a totally different design. He looked like a head on a giant candy bar. It's just like, and it said
like the Hershey candy bar.
And it was like a Hershey bar, but like a, like that Johnny DC guy where you go, we can only draw him from one angle because it doesn't work because he's not a 3-dimensional character at all. It's like he turned a desert into bubble gum and they were stuck, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. But
sounds fantastic.
It's like, can I put that in here? Is there room enough? No, I got too many shots of Dragon putting on his glove. So
I got to say, I mean, we talked about this when we reviewed the issue last week, but which I don't, that podcast just came out, right? Our review of that
just came out.
Yeah. But anyway, we were just, I was just amazed how like warts and all, you just included everything as it was. Cause you did a whole big thing on the forums years ago, which we have recorded of you going through like every issue that you remember and what you remember. And it's like all here. Nothing's changed. You left names in like candy and sugar. It's like you just went straight on your childhood creations into this exactly as they were.
I tried as much as I could. Some of it did have to be invented now because I just didn't remember. So like Star had in his secret identity, he had no job. Dragon in his secret identity, William, as far as I know, had no job. So I was like, all right, well, he seems like he could have been a reporter type because he was traveling around. I don't know. Maybe he could be that. And then Star was kind of created by Chris Vito. At least he had the idea of it. his idea was there'll be this guy who throws shurikens, and he didn't know what those were called. So they were stars. And that was just from like a James Bond movie where somebody had threw stars. So he just had the idea of a character named Star. He never drew him. And I just, okay, I'll draw him. And then I named him Chris because his name is Chris. So I would often do that. Like, all right, you can be Chris too. And then Chris had this dream once of a band name, which is what I used in this, was Snapping Granny and the No-No Biscuits.
Yeah.
It was like, that is such an awesome band name. And every time he was in bands as a kid, and up into adulthood, he played in bands. He was a drummer. And every time he would join a band, he would suggest that as a name. And every time they would laugh, and they would go, okay, but seriously. Like, no, it'd be an awesome name for a band. And nobody ever went for it. So, anyway, a lot of stuff is just me like, I need to work this in because this is part of my life and it must exist.
That is cool, though. Like, it's one of those things. As soon as, Craig told me Candy and Sugar were from the original, like, comics, like he had the documentation, I was like, okay, Snapping Granny and the No-No Biscuits definitely has a story. And it's just kind of a cool thing. Like, I love that you just gave us the story of that like it came to your friend in a dream. A huge thing about like indie comics or, just non-corpo stuff is that they always end up weirdly semi-autobiographical, whether the author means to or not. There's always just these nuggets from their life. That's the shit I eat up, man. That's good shit.
I wish I knew more of this stuff. Like, I don't remember any Ralph Johnson plot at all. I have no idea what Ralph Johnson ever did or how technologically advanced he was. I know really
pretty damn technologically advanced.
He was essentially the book's Lex Luthor, and he just would keep showing up and just being a pain in the ass. But beyond him being William's brother, I don't remember any of his stories. I know the Fiend was around, again, like, what the hell did the Fiend really do? I kind of remember what he looked like, so I drew him in a panel there somewhere.
He looks like a Steve Ditko guy in the.
Yeah, he was super. My villains were often really lame. They would just be like, they were like Superman villains, because Superman villains were always like, hey, and here's another bald guy who's, yeah. I mean, Superman villains were like, I got the one Caucasian bald guy, and now I've got this purple bald guy. He's the space parasite, but he doesn't do anything. Space parasite, as far as I can remember. He just is a purple guy. And then I got this green bald guy. And then I've got this really little bald guy who's from another dimension. It's like, holy crap, man.
Well, I have to say, I think this was one of the most anticipated issues for me. And, Raven saying yes, a lot of people I've been talking to. And then when we got it, talking with the gang here and then talking on the forums, a lot of people, even private messaging people, a lot of people were like, holy shit, this was like so fun to read. It was amazing. Like, were you worried what the reaction was going to be or how you were going to work this out? And, or I don't know. It's just something about it. It's just so fun to read. And it's just kind of
pretty weird.
Through.
I knew that it was going to be pretty dense because I knew that there was a lot that needed to be shoved into very little space. So that was part of it that was like, oh crap, am I going to be able to fit this in? And initially it was going to be that that Paul is narrating this to somebody, and we would get to the end and we'd see like who he's talking to about it. But then I just ran out of room. I was just like, I don't have room for that. Does it really matter who he's talking to?
It didn't.
He could just
No.
It didn't really. You
It
know,
didn't.
I mean, he could just as easily have been talking to whoever the book's current creative team was. You know, it's like, oh, Malcolm doesn't have any adventures this month. He's holed up in the hospital yet again. Lazy bum. So, Paul Dragon, it's your turn. You get to tell us all about your exciting life.
Yeah, we ate it up because it just felt so different in a number of ways. We mentioned the density. This is just a masterclass of compressed storytelling. And I mentioned this on the Facebook group. I'm going to mention it here again. You know, we'd have a lot of people who question the validity of a singles issue format these days. And then I say, when my criticism of those people is like, look, there's a lot of guys that don't know how to write for a single issue. Like, they can't. They only know how to write for a trade, or they grew up reading manga and everything they know is super decompressed. And it's like, look, if you put an issue like this in somebody's hands, there's just so fucking much stuff that happens in this issue. It's bonkers. It's incredibly satisfying. And that was one thing that made it really, really stand out. But then the other thing that made it stand out was that kind of different for Savage Dragon. We mentioned this in the review show, so for listeners, they're going over it again. But it really was cool how it kind of just felt like a character showcase, like a standalone, not necessarily continuity, just a, hey, here's Paul's stuff. So the kind of thing, were you kind of feeling that as you made it? Or you're like, this is just really different what I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. I returned to that 15 panel grid that I had done in the first issue of the Dragon miniseries, just because it's like, man, if you're trying to shove in a lot of stuff, using that grid is a way to do it. So there's a few pages which ended up being that many panels, but often you'll see me coming to that, it's a 5-panel wide tier, just like, let's shove in as much as possible.
Or it's a giant demonoid double splash in your face.
Which wasn't in any graphic fantasy or any of my old stuff at all, but I just needed some excuse for those kids to be turned into adults. So I thought, okay, well, let's give that an actual reason. Like, he's given powers and then he has to do this. And then, well, then why doesn't he change back? Because he loses his powers. So, but none of that's from my old comics. That didn't exist.
But it's great because it ties in like the Malcolm era type stuff.
Yeah,
like you're like, oh, this shit happened in Malcolm's era. It happened in the pre-Savage World era, So it's like, this isn't, things don't change in different realities.
The two ends of no, it's the butterfly effect, where one little thing happened and then that turned to this, to this, this. Part of that is like, I want there to be some of that. But then another part of it is, this doesn't make sense at all. Like, why would Chris Robinson be a white guy in this reality and a black guy in Image Universe? Is there any reason for that at all? It's like, no.
There's billions of different realities. There's
multiverse.
Yeah.
It's
comics.
I really, really enjoyed seeing, I keep mixing up their names, but Gorgon is he Mark or Peter? I can't remember. Peter.
Peter.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to, I think it was Savage Dragon 66 when Angel kind of first sees Peter and she's like, oh, like, what? I forget what she says. Something like,
why is he so ugly?
Yeah. And it's like, it makes Rita cry. Ever since that panel, I think fans have been like wondering what he's going to look like when he gets older. And we do kind of see that, but to see him in your, kind of original Gorgon form with the gray, almost Hulkish / Gremlin-ish.
Yeah,
the two toes.
Was really what that was me ripping off the Gremlin. And it was like, oh, I can't have him be the same color as that guy. So I'll just make him a gray dude. And then later on in the run, he was I don't know why suddenly he had regular skin later on, but he did. and he was rocking that costume that he showed up in Dragon, whatever it was, 248 or 249, one of those. When those guys showed up, those are the costumes that they had towards the end of Sergeant Marvel's run.
I think in this one, in this panel, just seeing him with the two toes really hits home that he's part, alien.
Yeah, he's part dragon.
Yeah, which, is kind of confirmed here in this panel, at least in this reality. But, it's like it was always a question, are they or are they not like part dragon's kids, at least in the Image universe. But that's really cool, and that was really fun to see.
It's all craziness.
Fun. Go ahead,
I mean, there's so many characters that at one point in the Deadly Duo comic, there is a girl from the future that basically dresses like Kid Avenger, who comes back to get Kid Avenger to pull him out of time and bring him back to the future. And then she ends up just hanging around. And then she ended up being Gorgon's girlfriend. So he is running around with a Kid Avenger looking girl. She looked just like Kid Avenger, except she had a long flowing head of black hair. And for whatever reason, that made sense to me.
Makes sense to me.
It's cool.
So that character doesn't exist in the modern Image universe. Killcat had a girlfriend in those old comics, who is the Black Cat, and I don't think I don't know if it was the same Black Cat that was here, but whatever.
I still love that you called her Black Cat and gave her a white uniform.
Yeah.
A white lady in a white uniform. Black Cat.
Yeah, she's Black Cat, whatever.
I need more characters, goddammit.
Yeah, I don't know. She might have been colored dark blue. I mean, we made her white here, so we can call her for the whatever, we can call her something else.
She got bit by a radioactive black cat, hence.
Yeah, I did. Fonte gave her that. Like, here's where I go.
Fonte is great in this issue, though. I know we talked a little bit about it, but he kind of stole the show for me in this. Like,
very satisfying.
To me, it's like I didn't know if he was just some crazy homeless guy with powers, or if he was really like a super intelligent wizard that really had no time for like lesser beings. And I kind of like that.
It's like in the Savage Dragon universe, he's such a mysterious force who's always like he's always like he's never focused. He shows up and he disappears. And in this universe, he's always around and he's a fucking weirdo. I love it.
Dig it to the fridge.
Yeah.
I always felt like like the 70s, it's like everyone has to have a guru. Like that's a musician, so it kind of makes sense. Oh, here's my guru. Like, why don't people have that anymore?
I don't know. Hanging around with homeless people, I guess.
So, I know I feel like you touched on this in the forums, and I wasn't sure if it was obvious, so I guess it is, because you kind of talked about how in this reality, which we see in the field, it seems like the Krylons kind of beam curved right down into William, just happens to be in that spot, and they merged.
William happened to be there,
and then
merged one, and so like when he got his powers, it was like, oh, I can change into a beefy dude. Now I'll dress up like the dragon, that beloved character who went missing. Why I want to call myself that, and why I want to steal his thunder, I don't know, but whatever. Give the public some continuity. He's gone now.
They need a symbol. A dragon symbol.
I need something. And he had a little something draped over his head, so I'm going to make something like that. And then when Fonte pulled him apart, he was like, I guess I'll give him the thing that's on his head, not knowing that he had a proper fin at one point. So that was that. Why he gave him two toes is a mystery. But whatever. Somebody didn't like Fonte.
So the Krylons in this universe, in your head, look exactly the same as they do in the image, and it was just Fonte that kind of screwed, because we were kind of like, oh, maybe that's the way those aliens look like.
Know how to pull them apart, and he also made it so William could still turn into dragon. So
like, is that why Paul doesn't have regenerative powers? Because his powers
that
William?
Was the idea. Was the powers were halved, and William could do some stuff that whatever. They were still tough. We'll just be strong, but we won't be able to grow back toes. Okay. Whatever. I mean, that was a power that I gave to Savage Dragon when I started at that series. That wasn't something that he had
previously.
In fact, I gave it to him on the fly as I was making these comics.
Because you wanted to rip him apart. Gotta put him back.
Such a good move. Yeah, it's such a great power to have for your main character.
I feel like it's become an industry standard.
You think?
I really do. Yeah, you got all kinds of guys running around ripping their arms off and just being like, "Oh well, just glue it back on." Feels like that's post Dragon.
This will be fine.
Gavin Higginbotham, for the listeners, he serves as your kind of editor. I guess you bounce ideas off him. He was telling me a little story after I read this. I kind of hit him up. I was talking to him a little bit about it, and we're laughing about the panel where Jennifer, when she's like in her bloop phase or whatever you want to call it, when she's a villain, and she just kind of hits Paul Dragon or William Dragon with their tit in the face, and it was like that was something that you actually drew, and your dad laughed at it or something.
That's a little kid, and my dad saw that and thought that is pretty crazy stuff, young man. And so I ended up erasing it and drawing her butting him with her head instead, just because I was so embarrassed by how stupid it was. But as an adult, I have no shame. I don't care. I thought, oh, poor sixth grade me. He needs to have that. Let's give him that.
Thankful for that, because it was like
Candy and Sugar were actual strippers back in the old comics either. They just were named that. So I thought, well, what else could they be given the
right?
So, but as all of my characters, I'm a kid in grammar school. Just the idea of people being employed was just so foreign to me that everybody just somehow managed to function without, ever having money or anything. It's like, I don't even know, like, where did they live? I don't know. I don't remember them having an apartment or a house or whatever. They were just all out. We're running around fighting. It's like, okay, good job, guys.
I've read modern comics written that way. It's like, where does this guy sleep? It seems like all he does is fight crime.
How does that guy work? How does that work? What's he up to? What's he do on his day off? What's the man bull doing when he's not out man bulling? What's he got going on?
As soon as I saw the titty punch, though, I was like, dude, yeah, it's got to be from the childhood. It's got to be a child. That's just such an awesome, pure kid.
Yeah, and I think I did an okay job of recreating what she looked like. I remember her having kind of that weird tiered hair thing going on. But I don't know. It's all a mystery to me. I don't know how a lot of this stuff works, but God, I wish I had access to these, because I'm sure they were just as insane as I half remember. But yeah, this was kind of the costume when Sue shows up. I think that was kind of what her costume was. She probably had boots of some sort, but I just gave her sneakers here because I gave her sneakers here. There's no good reason for it.
It looks like you went through multiple costumes. You got that one, then you got the one that's kind of black and red.
Yeah, she's got a few. I don't know if I made that one up there. I think that one was from something. Because there was that story that I had started in I ran in Savage Dragon Archives, where I had started a story and I didn't get very far. It was like I ended up using those 4 pages later on, like issue 60 or something, where I just redrew those, where they're like out fighting and they meet that giant weird fish-looking dude.
Oh yeah, purple fish guy, whatever.
Yeah, that. But I had drawn that before, and
Right.
I think I ran pages of that in the back of one of those Dragon Archives. So
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing that.
costume in there. So I was like, oh, here's another weird costume I could have her wear for half a panel.
That fish guy was so jarring. I remember seeing it first in the regular series, and it was like, this looks way cartoony. And then it was like, when you saw that you had drawn it way earlier, it was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that the book that the characters look really different from one period to another, because some of them are invented by a kid who's just out of his mind, you know. And a lot of those early designs are super, super lazy too. They would just be like, "Here's my guy. He's a bald dude and he's got a belt." Like, really? That's what you got? Yeah, most of my villains just sucked. But I was really into making up superheroes.
I find Flash Mercury so intriguing. Like, where does the needle nose come from? Like, what? Like, I would never think to draw that. Like, as a kid, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder where that comes
It's unique. Like, I don't even think of another visual like it.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty random. Or just like, why is this chicken dude named Powerhouse?
Like, for some reason, the needle nose reminds me of some kind of like Japanese anime character or manga character. I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is.
I don't know what I would have had access to.
Yeah, probably not. But
it's like I didn't have stuff.
yeah,
Where did this come from?
I love the fact that the 3 versions of Dragon are all fighting like side by side one point, and that you didn't just say, "Oh, I'm done with this guy. Like, I'm gonna move on to," like, you just kept them and they just became their own thing. When you read it, it's like, damn, I want to read a book about this team. Like, it's like, man, I need more now. Like, you teased us with this, and now it's all stuff that's not around in this universe. The universe is gone, and it's like, I feel so like teased.
Those are the sorts of things that I could do, like as a backup or in something weird. It's just like, hey, anybody feel like trying this insane thing? Like,
feel free to plumb the past, because Paul's universe, like, just getting to see it in this book, like Craig said, it just feels like it's a gold mine full of stuff that you could do backups. I mean, like, yeah, 3 dragons all at once. That's a backup right there. Holy shit.
Here we are. We're doing our stuff.
And I think you said at what Rex Dexter is not battle tanking this, right? It's his daughter, or you were going to make it at one point?
He was going to make it his daughter. Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, the idea, Rex Dexter as a character was created way later. He was never named that. I don't know that we even saw who was in it, but I knew that was going to be a second generation character. Like, there was an earlier battle tank, and now there's going to be a new one, and it's going to be, hey, surprise, it's a girl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that would have been a reveal at some point when the costume came off. It's like, my gosh, she's beautiful. Just like every other character, she's got enormous hooters.
Fantastic. I approve.
Yeah, you know, those hormones were just raging. And, you know, it all had to go down on paper. So there we go.
Cartoonist libido never subsides.
Well, it's always been my theory. That's why everyone learns to draw.
Sure.
I just need some material, man. What are you doing in there, Billy? Go and blow.
Nothing, go away.
There's a line in this, or a panel, I should say, where Fonte kind of tells the William Paul amalgam that he has a destiny bigger than he can possibly imagine. When I read that, maybe I'm reading too deep into it. I was thinking maybe he's talking about.
I already know you.
All right, he's talking about Paul coming into our universe.
It's always Fonte is always cryptic, like, "Oh, I've got something big is coming." It's like, no, it's not. Come on.
So he's just a crazy homeless guy, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, he's out of his gourd.
So my real question, my big question is: was this universe destroyed in the merging of the multiverse? Because that was the whole idea.
Yeah,
right? And the only reason why Paul survived is that he was in Dimension X already.
Yeah. So there's a possibility that somewhere down the line, I may have several other people drop out of Dimension X going, "Hey, yeah, we were looking for you."
Hey.
And it would just be like, "Oh, it's the good Mako hanging out with the Red Rock and Fonte because his dialogue's fun to write."
Yes, please. Well,
Yeah.
Fonte could also exist in this universe, right? Because he doesn't.
Yeah.
He never showed up in the Savage world.
You've never seen him in the universe.
Yeah.
You've only seen him in Image World. Whatever.
I hate to correct you, but remember it was in a backup of 100. We see Fonte after the Horde fight or after the Possessed fight.
Oh, right. But he tells Dragon that this is the last time I'll see you or something.
We covered this last thing. He says, "You'll never see me again." And we were like, well, that's genius dialogue because he could just be talking to Dragon, who's dead. So you're good. So you're covered.
Good. You're never going to see you again. But I'll write stuff like that all the time where it's cryptic. You go, oh. Like when Alex left and she was like, that was the last time I ever saw him. It's like, well, she can't see into the future.
Right.
So how could she know that she wouldn't bump into him years later? It's just not magic. Yeah, but what does it all mean?
I just want to say this was an overall like barn burner of a book, and then the backup story by Simon Millette St. Pierre, who I think just kills it when he draws like the Dragon Kids. Like his art style fits it really well, and it was such a great backup for a great full issue. I just loved it.
He's doing a longer Dragon Kids story for this upcoming 100-page extravaganza. So.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, his style just works so well with the kids. It's so fun.
Yeah, it is. It is like, oh man.
We were bragging on him. We were like, how do you just make just a fin?
And it looks interesting as hell.
It looks great.
It's like, oh, that's a cool back cover.
Yeah. We're like, that's fantastic. What a find. That Simon. What a character.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it.
So
so this definitely was a fun issue to try and wrap my brain around. And Gavin had to be like, no, you can't do that because it's like, oh shit. Because I had Paul talk too goddamn much when he first showed up. And he's like saying stuff that he was like, I wasn't found in a burning field. It's like, fuck, god damn it. So that's why I started off this issue saying, I didn't wake up in a burning. It's like, all right, I got that covered.
Technicality. I didn't wake up in this burning field.
Yeah, but initially I had Star talking to Fonte, going, "Hey, something's fucked up here. He's clearly not William anymore. You got to look into this and maybe pull him apart." But then I was reading 251 and was like, no, this doesn't work. It's like, shit, why did I say that? Because some of these little things I hadn't figured out. you know? And so I'm figuring out this backstory now, going, okay. And it just, once you start establishing little pieces here and there, it all just trips you up. But I wanted to also establish that that Vanguard story in Megaton. Like, let me place this in continuity so that it becomes a thing.
I think you handled those last few pages well with the basically just referencing like the previous stories and putting the editor's box to point us to where to go. I think that was the smartest way to play that, because then we know as readers there's more out there.
It, like, I wasn't able to reference Graphic Fantasy #2 at all. And it was like, well, I printed the comic at one point, so people know that it exists. Oh well. I'm out of space. I need to get him into Dimension X. I need to do that as fast as I possibly can.
Well, I think it was just announced too that Image is publishing or reprinting the Megaton comics, right, as a collection. Yeah. So that's kind of cool too. So you don't have to read about it. Like, it's going to be, even if you didn't get the back issues or whatever, or didn't get it when it came out, you can now have a chance to read that. So like all that stuff's getting kind of reprinted and collected is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's it. It is. But like Reagan's in it. It's like,
oh. Well, maybe in that reality, there's no term limits, you know.
Right. It's like, so in this reality, Reagan ended up getting a couple more terms and living like way long, and he was out of his mind.
It just doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Just keep this going. Yeah. Oh well. So yeah, that was another panel that I got to re-ink with Vanguard in it. I just took the one from
the original
Megaton and just be like, all right, I'm gonna detail the crap out of these buildings in the background and go to town on all this rubble.
I gotta ask, learning that 264 was mostly digital was kind of incredible because it doesn't look it. And so I gotta say,
there's bits and pieces that aren't because I'm reusing some stuff, right? So then there'll be panels, and when I'm inking it, I'm able to go, okay, well I can't get thinner than this because this is actual art right next to fake art.
So are you did you enjoy working digitally? Because that was kind of a thing I was asking you about one time, and you were like, I don't know, maybe I'll do it down the road. That time has come. So is that kind of a thing that you enjoy working digitally a little bit, or is that a whole new set of headaches?
I like it somewhat, but then I'm finding the limitations of it already. So like when I do like those scraggly panel borders, I find that I can do those with a brush on a piece of paper, like in 15 seconds. And then doing them digitally, it's like, this takes forever. Like getting it to look right and getting the thick and thin in the right place, it's a process, and it takes me way too long. So like the issue after this, I started doing digitally. And then when it gets towards the end of the issue, I'm just like, I'm just going to do this on paper.
Sure.
To hell with it. And then I did a bunch of pages on paper at the end, and then I would augment them in Photoshop, and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to drag in this splatter effect or this other thing. I don't know.
Interesting.
As long as it looks good in print, that's all I really care about.
It's just cool to hear you experimenting with that kind of stuff.
It can be fun. The downside is no original art.
Yeah,
right.
You know? But
you're still you're still penciling everything though, right? No.
Oh no. Depending on what it is. There's periods where, well, that's the sketchbook stuff. If I'm sitting there struggling with a shot, I'll be like, I'm going to sketch something in my sketchbook. Then I'll take a photo of it and drag it into a Photoshop doc.
Wow.
and turn that gray and ink that. So there's a few different things here and there that end up from there that end up being there. More so in the next issue that's coming up than in this one necessarily. But like a lot of this stuff is me taking panels from other comics, and like Dragon waking up in the hospital looking at his hands was William waking up in the hospital with Dragon's brain looking at his hands.
Right, yeah.
You know, so the hospital stuff was obviously the hospital stuff. Page 1 that's my original, you know, from issue 1 of Dragon in the Burning Field. All I had to do here is draw one dude. So that was, that's like, we're done. That I actually ended up having to do twice, because when I first did it, I had made the hairs on his arms so fine that when I pulled out, it was like, there's no way. That just doesn't. It just looks terrible. It's going to look way too tight, and it won't look like it was drawn on paper. I want it to look like it was drawn on paper. I don't want it to look all computery or whatever. But like suddenly my cars get really good.
I'll just
like that car on page 3, where it's like we see it from the front and it actually looks like a car, and then we see it from behind and it's all at an angle and stuff. It's like, holy crap, man, what's going on here? It's like, well, it turns out that if you're actually drawing over a photograph of a car, that you can kind of make it look like a car.
You got really good at drawing 1982 Lincoln Continentals.
Well, I congratulate you for stumbling upon the digital art pitfall already, because there's like a million books that I've picked up, and they look fucking like they're filled with way too fine art. And I know that shit looked great on their monitor, but like they weren't thinking of print.
I was just looking at something recent that John Bogdanov had drawn. And there were like these tiny, tiny characters in the background, and I'm going, yeah, he drew that on a tablet.
I fucked up on my Super Freaks. I mean, I'm not above it myself. There's that panel where you've got Dilbert, the Dilbert style Savage Dragonbert, like Liefeld character. And like then on into the background, there's the smaller drawn characters. I fell right into the pit trap. I zoomed in and started drawing, and
it's so easy to do.
They look bad in print.
Well, like even this, if I'm going through it, you know, there'll be like little figures, like Candy walking away holding the hand of the little kid. It's like, oh, her hair is too fine, and that figure is kind of way tighter than it should be at that size. Oh well.
It looks good though. You're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, you fooled us. I don't think.
Yeah, we didn't know. We didn't know.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's as it should be.
And believe we're spending hours poring over each panel so we can talk about it every month.
Yeah, I won't shame any certain comic, but let's just say every now and then I'll buy one and I'll just like, it's like clear they zoomed in to draw the face and then zoomed out to draw the body. And I'm like, bros, it doesn't work. Like I can tell. I know
the face is way too detailed.
Face looks great. Body looks simple. It's like,
yeah, well, you've got to restrict yourself and really be like, okay, use no brush smaller than this.
Yeah.
And then even when you've zoomed way in, you're sitting there going, I'm inking this with a barrel. What the hell? It's like, oh, that's because you're way zoomed in, buddy. So it's a good thing you're holding that giant whatever. But there's a few places here where Dragon's arm hair gets a little tighter than it ought to be, and some tiny figures here that are like, that's probably a little more complete than it would be if it was on paper. Whatever. Nobody cares, right?
It's interesting. It's just exciting. Yeah. It's just interesting to see you playing with these new toys.
Yeah. So that double page spread, where the giant Demonoid shows up. The guy in the upper right-hand corner,
Yeah.
that's Mighty Man.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's from the Megaton kind of look, right?
It's the Megaton version of Mighty Man.
Yeah,
So-
I caught that.
Eagle Eye Olsen caught it. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
we
dude, it's
talked
cool
about
as shit.
And that double page splash, I almost thought at first it was just a flip of an existing splash. It looks pretty close, but is there like the head reused, or is it completely redrawn?
The head was reused, and then a bunch of it was tweaked and re-inked, because it was flipped, and then once I flipped it, it was like, well, this looks screwed up. So one of the eyes was way bigger than the other one, and it really looked it once you flipped it over. And there were various other pieces on it where, like, all right, well, this part of where one horn comes in looks weird, and it looks different on this. So I ended up re-inking a ton of it. But it was good to keep it on the page while I'm doing the rest of it, just as, just a reality check of, you don't get too small, don't get too tiny, because it's got to look like it belongs on the same page as this other stuff.
I loved how Battle Tank still has tank treads on her legs, or his legs, or whoever.
Yeah.
That's
like,
pretty cool.
it makes no sense at all.
And then I guess we learned that the Demonoids might have some powerful sorcerer on their side too, at least in this reality, maybe in Malcolm's, who knows, but that kind of leaves something open.
Assuming that the magical person turned into this giant thing, because once these two guys jump into his eyes, then there's sort of like he suddenly appears in the middle of it all.
Right.
So I was thinking, well, since they fought the same demonoid before, we never really got the resolution to how that fight went down. Maybe Fonte stepped in on that one. Maybe there's some other magical guy that we haven't really touched on who showed up. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of magical guys. I could probably stand out a couple others.
Yeah, you never really did like a kind of Doctor Strange type guy, did you?
Not really. So Fonte is the closest I came to doing that, and I barely used him. So now I've got a weird Fonte who talks crazy.
Love it. Love the crazy dialogue, like the words that sound similar to words. What a genius solution for taking out Fonte. I was like, oh, that's great. If you can't kill him, fuck his words up.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Not that we ever hear him saying any magical incantations anyway, but just something, it's like he's not able to say anything. It's like, all right, we're good to go.
It was fantastic.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here that's like, oh, cool. I can do that. Do this. Touch on this. Oh, yeah, Mako's running around with all the SOS guys. So I was thinking I'd forgotten to have him be a good guy, but there he is.
He's in that one panel, right? Yeah.
On that one panel with my Kirby swiped guys. It is different. I don't know. For whatever reason, just having this tablet thing makes it like swiping is so super easy. It's like, oh, this will be a cool thing. I'll just drag in this.
Yeah, Paul Dragon in the middle there looks very Kirby-ish to me.
Yeah, he was Captain America, Star was Spider-Man, Rock was the Thing. I think Jennifer was Thor. So it was just like a drawing that had like, hey, here's all the Marvel characters running around.
Oh, so it was one drawing and you just...
It was one drawing with a bunch of... It was all on one page, so it wasn't wide like this. So I ended, moving around. Like the Flame is Human Torch, obviously.
Right.
And then Some of them I just made up poses for because I ran out of guys I could steal from. Whatever.
Wait till you get addicted to the pulling in people's pencils and being able to digitally ink over top of that. Because like I don't have a light box. I just don't work with one. I never did.
Yeah.
And so I never did have the ability to ink over people's pencils and stuff. Well, now with the tablet, I can just grab anybody who puts pencils on the internet. I can just drag them into my program and just digitally ink over top of them. And I was like inking over Don Simpson and all these other people, that I'll never get my hands on their pencils.
Yeah.
But I can now.
It's kind of fun. And there's like things in 263 where I was like, God, I draw hands the same way all goddamn time. I got to find some different hand somewhere. I just went on like, oh, Carlos Pacheco would draw some cool hands sometimes. I'm just going to find a couple of Carlos Pacheco hands and rip them off. So there's a page in here where suddenly a couple characters have Carlos Pacheco hands. So, oh, well.
I love it.
That's in 263. When, you can find them. Yeah,
we'll be looking.
You'll be looking. It's like, wait a minute, is this one? It's like, yeah.
That looks a little too good.
Something about it. He must have used an actual professional. God, yeah, like this shot at the end of 263 where they're in suddenly in real hospital beds. Like, I've always just kind of made up shitty hospital beds before, and then this one, suddenly it's like, oh, that's a real hospital bed. So, and that's a real hospital too. That's up in Toronto that I've been using.
Right.
With that weird fucking bridge that goes across the street. That weird tube.
Well, you can't walk outside. It's too cold in Canada, right?
I think it must be a parking structure across the street or something. I don't know why there's that tube, or if if doctors are going back and forth. I don't know. But
they have a lot of those in Philly, and I've seen it in Boston too. I think it is because like the cold weather too. Like they just build these buildings, and it's a way to connect them. You're pushing patients through.
There's a few here where there's places where they're like, let's just build a tube. Have that go across the street. That'd be awesome.
It's probably just easier to get patients back and forth or something.
Yeah, I just thought it was a visually distinctive enough thing so that when I do an establishing shot of the hospital, like, I'm just going to use this hospital because it's got this crazy tube.
Yeah, it worked. Every time you see the tube, you know where you're at.
All right, he's in the hospital again. So now I have to find a San Francisco hospital that I can use.
Well, at least now you can go take your own photos if you need to too, if you want. Yeah. I guess as Google now, everything you can just look on Google Earth and just.
Yeah, but like when I did the cover with San Francisco in the background, that was a photo I took.
Oh yeah,
nice.
I was like, I'm going to go to the actual spot. I walked there with Janie, and I had her stand there, and it's like, you don't have to do every pose. Just
don't have to dress up like a dominatrix. Or...
Well, she just was like that all the time.
That's a default garb.
That's it. We're going out, honey. Get your hat. But that made drawing that so much easier just to have it where I could go over an actual photograph on a tablet where I could see it. Whereas when I would do the light box thing, that's always a pain in the ass because you got the light coming in and you don't know what you've actually put down yet. So it was always an ordeal to do that. But that was like, oh, that's my first cover that's not actually on paper.
Wow.
That's cool. That's so interesting and exciting. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I'm not one of those digital is better guys at all. I still totally love to work on paper, ink, paper. It's definitely got its own appeal that like you can't reproduce digitally. That being said, there are some toys.
There's tools. There's things you can do. Yeah. And it's, and as long as it doesn't look like crap, you use some of those tools and do something neat with it.
Yeah.
With me, somehow or other, sitting at the drawing board on the other side of the room just became this mental, like, I can't do this anymore. I don't like sitting in this space. Where else in this room, And then I've been toying with the idea of getting one of these things forever. My birthday rolled around and Janie didn't know what to get me, so I'm like, get me this. So she did. And then it was, all right, I'm going to start with Ant, because Ant's easy. I'll just take the dragon pages, feed them in there, turn them to gray, and then ink them with black with that dead line. So I got no line weight variation going on any of that stuff. And then it was like, all right, let me try a page doing this other way. Try that out. But I was concerned because when the switch over, those two pages are sitting next to each other. And I was a little worried that people are going to be, well, these pages look really different.
You really can't tell. I'm telling you, 264 had us fooled. We had no idea. We did sort of pick up on the use of photo reference, but we didn't know that it wasn't paper. We had no idea.
Yeah, there's two panels in here which are completely just traced photos, and one of them is the two strippers. And if you just go Google search two strippers, that will be on the first page.
Right.
Why the choice to do that instead of just drawing two babes?
I don't know.
Just playing around with the new toy.
It was ease, or it was, let me see if I can turn this into something of my own. Yeah, in later stuff, I was like, I wonder if I could have this based on a real person and just use that person throughout. There's times I'm like, I want to have hands here. I'll just take a photo of my own hands and then trace over my own hands and see how that looks. The shot of Paul and Sue, I always want to call her Jennifer.
Yeah.
But when Angel's a little baby and got a pacifier in its mouth, that was a photograph of a couple, but I changed them a lot because I think they were both black. So there was I can change these guys quite a bit, and you won't really notice that much that it's a photograph, but whatever. It was a photograph.
It's cool. Like I said, I'm just excited to see. I mean, you're a cartoonist that's been working for so long one way, and even just my own little experiment. I mean, I've only been messing with digital for about 5 years, but there's still a ton of stuff I don't know how to do. And I'm always discovering some new thing. And
there's some other program that you're supposed to use, and I'm just using Photoshop because that's all I know.
It's Clip Studio.
But I'm having other people go, oh, you got to use, I don't remember what the hell it is, but you got to use it because you could do all this stuff and you can do perspective and it'll all fall right into place. And I'm sitting here with making vanishing points and using a ruler. And
if you're the two everybody loves is, if you're a Mac guy, it's Procreate, and if you're whoever guy, it's Clip Studio. Clip Studio is actually what it used to be Manga Studio. Japanese people have been using it for years to make their comics, and it's made for comics. So if you get under the hood of that, they've got shit to make panel layouts, word balloons, all that stuff that you really don't need help with. But I mean, it's built in there. There's perspective tools, 3D dummies you can just throw up and pose. It's shocking. I don't use it, but it's there.
I've got a Mac, so if that's available to me, then
you can do it. Clip works. Yeah, it's got zipatones, all those digital zipatones. I know you'll go nuts with that stuff. So
I've been using digital zipatones since I started scanning in my own art. So since issue 100 is where I started, and there's some Photoshop special effects in that issue, which like somebody's like firing something with their hand, and I'm like, oh, what if I made that into dots? Let me see what that looks like. It looks terrible. Oh well, don't do that again. But I've been doing, just to be able to have, they stopped making Zipatone or stopped making it readily available.
Yep.
So I just scanned in some of the patterns that I had. I'm like, now I can use this forever and not have to worry about it. So, whoo.
Yeah, I'll be excited when you get more into that stuff to see just kind of the places it takes you, because you pick up a ton of speed. You end up just sort of doing weird experimental shit that you just never. That's where your mind goes. Is you think, oh, I could never do this before. Now I'm going to do it just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I know you're a huge experimenter anyway.
Yeah, but it's like that effect of Fontee's hand open with that thing. It's like I didn't draw that. Found that online, and then I had used that same effect in the Dragon Mako fight. There's a panel where Mako's throwing Dragon. You can just see Dragon's feet. And so it's like, all right, well, I've used it here. I'll use it. I use that same effect over here. But now I'm like, all right, I've got that, but I don't want to use it every issue because that's going to get to be a little much.
Right.
Love Mako and that 2-finger toss. It's like,
yeah. That 2-finger. Try that this way.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask is, I know we've got a bunch of, besides your B covers, actually one thing with your B covers, with the Image Comics Presents, were you tempted at all to do like Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics Presents or something? I mean, I think you probably wouldn't because it has the word Marvel in it, but that would have been really cool to have on 264 of something with like Sergeant Marvel Presents.
Or just Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics.
Yeah, whatever you used to have as a kid.
Like, what?
Did that cross your mind at all for a second?
No. Although I've got that really, really shitty dragon logo too that I used with like, I did that back cover where Dragon's head was all weird from Graphic Fantasy number 2 or something.
Yeah, right. The wavy dragon.
It's like he really looks like Dragon's got the gout. But that's the logo that I used on Graphic Fantasy 1, and that's pretty horrible and hand drawn. So I guess if I do more with Paul, I could do one of those one day. Here's his logo.
I guess where I was going for before I sidetracked myself was I noticed, you do the A and B covers, and now it seems like you're having a run of variant covers. You got Gary Frank on 265, who's kind of returned the favor for the Geiger cover you did. And then it looks like based on the previews I've seen, Scott James is doing a cover for 266, which almost looked like it would have been a great cover for 263.
Yeah.
And then Simon, who did the backup in 264, is doing a cover for 267. Is this a new thing that you're thinking of, having like different artists do a cover?
I probably won't do it all the time just because people don't like it. And, I've got a couple people who owe me a favor because I did covers for their books.
Gotcha.
So,
does this mean we'll get a Chris Samney cover?
Music needs to get somebody on there. So I probably won't get an Alex Ross cover, but I may get a Bryn Anderson cover at some point.
What was that? What book was that for that you did? That was for
I did the Return of Astros.
Right. What about you got Chris Samney, right, with Firepower? Or I think a lot of people gave covers on that one, so it was like an anniversary issue.
Yeah, I would love to, but I don't know if Robert doesn't control his life, so
Right. Oh, all right.
he feels like he owes me one. But it was like, Robert, hire somebody. I don't know. I don't give a shit.
I really
A lot
like
of-
the Gary
if
Frank
I have
cover.
time, it's finding time is just the biggest pain in the ass, because it's taking me forever to do anything.
Yeah.
So, like, I want to do more, but I know that it's like I've got this 100-page issue coming up. It's like, well, how the hell am I going to fill that goddamn thing? Why did I say that was a good idea?
We were like kind of amazed that that you were coming out with another giant size. I get it for the 30th anniversary, but it was like, man, he's getting right on track. Like, he's gonna blow it. Like, please don't blow it. Like, we're getting used to getting Dragon like monthly, and I'm like, you're gonna do this? People are gonna bog you down.
I've got stuff that I haven't colored, so I've got those Megaton stories that haven't seen print yet in color, and so it's like I can do my weird throwback color for that. You can get some more Paul Dragon action.
Nice.
Right on.
Got that. I've got stories that I've run here and there, but I can always just like, hey, I'm dumping this in there, and you'll be like, that's half a Herculean, for crying out loud. What are you doing? Well, a lot of people haven't seen it. I hope they like it.
Is there any like other? I know you mentioned Simon doing a backup. Is there anyone else that you've tapped that you can tell us?
There's another backup, but I don't want to say because
it might not happen.
It's like, God damn it. I actually had one guy started it and just screwed the pooch. Like, he never finished it. And I gave him the plot like fucking 2.5 years ago. And he's managed to turn in 3 or 4 pages, but it's a 10-page story. And it's like, I can't just
keep waiting.
Can't deal with 3 and 4 pages. And then he had his sob story. He's over here, and then he lost his portfolio, and then had the other pages, and they were. It's like, well, just recreate them, man. You're not. You can do that. You'll get paid when you actually finish them. I can't pay you otherwise.
It's crazy too, because
that was frustrating.
Things in real time, like, kind of affect things. So if you're getting things late, things have changed and moved on.
Yeah, and that was the problem. It is basically a story of what's her name? That robot name
Greta.
that they have.
Greta Gearbox.
Like, whatever happened to her is basically that story.
It's frustrating for me because I love that character. I wanted more of her.
And it's 10 pages. And it's like, well, I don't have many places where I can run a 10-page story. But if I'm doing a 100-pager, bam, it can go right in there. But my original artist, who was supposed to do it, never got his shit together. And if he did suddenly get his shit together and turned it all in, I'd be like, all right, we're going to run the same page and same story in here twice with 2 different artists, showing you the different approaches and what you can get when you got 2 different people doing the same thing, which was also kind of fun about doing that. When I did those 3 Deadly Duos.
Yeah, that was wild.
Oh, yeah. Because it was like, it's the same story with 3 different guys, and I wasn't counting on them getting their shit together. Because basically what happens with when I write backup stories is half the time they never get it done. So there'll be people who pester me and just be like, they're on me all the time. When are you going to send me a plot? Are you going to send me a plot? And it's like the best way to get them to shut up and never hear from them.
Send them a plot.
Send them a plot. Because then it's like they're gone forever.
That's tough. That's so annoying.
But it's like they will never get their act together, which is why a lot of guys never break in, because they never bother to actually do the work. It's like, you got to do the work. And you got to do it on a regular basis. And then as time goes on, you get better and you figure out all this stuff that you didn't know how to do. And eventually you're like, you either get to be pretty good and you're able to make a go of it, or guys don't do that. Happens, but mostly it's guys who just never produce. Period. They just never get going.
All right, it might be a case where a lot of guys can do pinups, but they cannot do sequentials. Like they look great, and then you give them sequentials to do, and they just flounder.
Yeah. Just like, I don't know what to do. And also I write plot styles, so I think that can be really intimidating to some people who are like, whoa. You're not going to tell me what goes on in every single panel and all the dialogue in every panel and describe the shit out of everything? It's like, no, come on. You're not an idiot. Here we go. Page 1. There's what happened. I break it down in pages, so you know what happens on every page. And it's kind of fun for me to see what people take from it, because I've worked with some artists who are like, I thought this was going to be a multiple panel page, and they were like, I turned this into a splash. Like, oh, okay, that's a different approach. I didn't know you were going to do that. I guess I'm writing for that. Which is fine, because it makes it something of a challenge for them, because they're faced with all sorts of things that need to be figured out. And then when I get it back, it's this huge challenge for me, because I'm going, oh, I had all this dialogue that I thought I'd be able to fit here, but I can't fit at all. So now I got to come up with a different way of telling this stuff, or find a really succinct way of getting this down to just a couple lines of dialogue. Anyway, I like working Marvel style. Every time I've ever worked from a full script, I just wanted to kill myself. God, this is infuriating.
Hence why you went after the Alan Moore Supreme script, right?
Oh my God. That was the worst, because it's
so dense.
So much description of that was redundant. That didn't need to be. Like, you've told me that this person is holding a bag. You don't need to remind me that they're holding a bag for the next 40 panels. But there's all that, and then there's all this other stuff. Oh, good Lord! So on that, I was taking a marker and going to, okay, what do I actually, in all this copy, what do I have to draw? Oh, it's this, coming through there with a highlighter, like, just draw this part. Oh, great. But man, getting past that and being able to just do whatever the hell I wanted to, it's like,
thank God.
Working with other people.
It's why you do your own comics.
I know. It's like, I don't know that I'll ever work with another writer again at this point. It's like, I'm an old dude. I don't need this for a variety of reasons.
So why put yourself through a double size issue again? Like, just, it seems like you don't like doing them, but then it seems like you also like doing them. It's
like because the anniversary came rolling around, and it's also a weird ass anniversary. It's like it's the 30th anniversary of the ongoing book. It's actually 31 years of the character being introduced in Image. But it's like, oh, I missed that other anniversary, so I guess I'll celebrate this one. But in theory, in 4 years from now, I could do another one.
It makes me laugh, because I feel like you always complain after, like, oh man, that was so tough, but you can't help yourself from doing it. You do them all the time.
Me as a kid too, because I love. But it is I don't love drawing, and I don't love making comics, but I love having made comics. Right?
As a reader, though, those issues are terrific. I got
this physical thing; it's in my hand.
Yeah,
this is awesome. I have made this thing.
As a reader, getting
the process of sitting down and drawing is like, oh my God, this is such torture.
Well, sounds like you really wanted to be an editor.
I don't know. I don't even know, because every person I've ever wanted to work with is infuriating. So,
well, yeah, that's the problem. You got to work with other people.
I mean, there's good and bad. Every now and then I'll get one that's like, all right, that's all right. Raven was good to work.
Hey, right on.
that one was nothing but fun. But there's been a few where I'm like, what do I even do?
Raven's a pleaser.
I do my best.
I was amazed to learn about how that was plotted and to see Raven's pages come through. It was like, wow, that was pretty damn cool.
It was magic for me too.
It's fun to do that. I don't even remember. Did I give you a plot? Did I write something out?
You gave me a plot. Yeah, and it was like you said. You just Angel and Thunderhead are sitting down. They're talking. It's flirtatious and like that. I was like, they're at a
There's
cafe.
My page. And now, what are they saying? Oh, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was like, ooh. I was like,
where's this going?
Yeah,
It turns out he forgot.
I gotta draw their faces.
Well, I was so amazed when you told me, like, I don't know what the dialogue is. Like, I just drew it and I found out when I saw it. It was like, holy shit, that's crazy. Because it doesn't look that way. It looks like you knew what they were saying.
That's the challenge of writing to somebody's art is you go, okay, looking at what their expression is, I have to come up with something that fits that. If he's having him doing something else, I'd be like, all right, I got to fit something that has to do with something else. And it just becomes this, it's like putting together a puzzle. It's when you get the pages, like, how the hell do I make this work? It's like those 3 Deadly Duo stories. All I was doing was changing out who the villain was and who the guest star hero was. But other than that, I was sending him the same script, thinking one of them they deliver, and it turns out all 3 of them.
The one time they all.
that all 3 showed up to the dance. It was like, okay,
that was really fun though.
What am I going to do? Now it becomes 3 is perfect. If 2 of them had shown up, that would have been kind of a drag. But like 3, then it becomes like a recurring gag, and it's like,
It was.
Yeah, that was great.
Perfect.
Yeah, it worked great. It worked perfect.
Yeah, that's a fun way to do comics. But yeah, this 100-page thing is creeping up on me like really, really quick. Like, I'm working on the issue before that. This is going to be fun. So I'll either do super quick style and just do a bunch of pages of whatever, Carl Cosmic.
He's always a crowd pleaser.
I mean, those are fun, and those go pretty fast. I can usually do a 6-pager in a day, because they're just super simple. One of those, the last one I did, I drew print size. I just did it on 8.5 by 11 paper, just with a marker. Here you go. So this is. The lead story's got to be good. The rest of it is like, okay.
You get some Adam Pruitt funnies back. Those are always a nice one pager.
Yeah, he hasn't put one of those together in a while.
Lean on Adam, yeah.
Come on, man. Step up. I actually don't have anything to write in the back of my next issue, so I'm going to have to knock on his door. Some things just kind of miraculously fall out of the sky. It's like, oh, beautiful. Hey, do you have any place to run this? Yes, I do. And sometimes those things have kept me going in times where I'm really sitting there going, oh, I don't know if I got any more, man. They'll be like, yeah, but you're running this 10-part Vanguard story and Frank's on issue 8. I guess I can't just stop here. I don't want to disappoint Frank.
It's kind of terrifying to hear this from you. Like, I never thought that you were like so many times like, oh, just stop here.
Yeah. I mean, it's eventually it'll just be death that ends me. And then it's like,
as us all.
Good. Now I can rest. But I don't imagine that'll ever actually happen that I'll do that. But it's always in my brain somewhere. Dude, you could just go to Spain right now with your wife and have a good old time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
We've been wondering. We've been thinking. If I think I recall something, didn't you say she's retired now?
Oh, she's been retired.
Yeah.
So does retirement ever? I only say this because I work around a bunch of much older people, and all they talk about is retirement 24/7. It's like every day I'd be like, hey, how many years, Steve? Oh, 2? 1. And it's like, it's all they think about. It's the old retirement bug. Is it creeping in? You thinking about it?
The problem is I don't have any other life. This is all I've got. Like, what are your hobbies? Well, I draw and write comic books.
Right.
So what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? I'd probably be doing some shitty Savage Dragon comic that doesn't, but it would be way cruder because I wasn't feeling like, oh, it's got to be at a certain standard in order to be in print. It would just be like, I don't know if you guys ever saw like those like last Steve Ditko.
Oh,
things.
the Mr. A or what?
The ones that Robin Snyder sold. Like, public thing.
And when he was on his like Ayn Rand rants.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to be disparaging, but they're just like minimal effort comics. Like, here's
just
my
for
hero.
him, basically, right?
He's called the hero, and he wears the lamest costume, and has the lamest fights with the lamest villains. And it's like, I don't even know what you're doing other than all you've known how to do your entire life is draw comics, and you can't do anything but that. And so that's how you entertain yourself. You're just continuing to draw comics. So I think, when I'm old and supposed to be retired, I'm just going to be sitting there poolside still drawing comics. They'll just be old Steve Ditko style.
The hero versus
just
villain.
don't
out of my mind,
Just don't cut up all your original art or anything like that.
What was that?
So don't cut up all your original art or anything like Steve Ditko.
Burned it in a fire like Otley did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, guy. Didn't know that later on it was going to be on TV, and you could sell those pages for a grip of cash.
It's crazy.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. I wanted to mention. I noticed that the solicitation for the second volume of the hardcover came out. Are you have you already worked on volume 2? Are you actively working on it to get that ready to go? And what can we expect?
I should be.
Is that going to have like a sketch section and everything?
When I scanned in a bunch of sketchbook stuff for the first one, there was stuff where I'm like, well, this would be better in the second volume because it really doesn't apply here. But the second one will have a lot less sketchbook stuff just because there's a lot less material. And for the first one, I was figuring out what I was doing. I had no idea. Like, oh, what do the background characters look like? What do my villains look like?
Right.
Overlord, on his first appearance, I'm drawing him from behind because I didn't even know what his costume looked like. So I haven't turned him around. So, and then I'm sitting here drawing multiple versions of him. Like, oh, what's he gonna look like? So in later ones, there's not as much material. I was making photocopies of my pencils the whole time because I needed it for just in case they get lost when I'm sending them off to Chris to letter. So I've got a bunch of those. So if there's something that's crazy looking in there, I can be like, oh, here's something. Check this out. But even going on the backs of my pages for the later original art, looking on the backs of those, a lot of them are clean. But it was like I wasn't figuring anything out. I kind of had a bunch of the characters were kind of dialed in at that point. So the sketchbook definitely slows up quite a bit. But there's weird stuff I can be like, hey, check out this weird thing.
Yeah,
I don't even know. I'm going to be opening a lot of boxes very shortly.
It seemed like Volume 1 did really well. It was on a lot of like the top lists for sales for collections, and some of those websites were selling out, like those trade websites. You got to be pretty happy.
Super expensive book to put together.
Yeah.
So it hasn't broken even. I'll tell you that.
Oh, wow.
It's very much in the red because we had to recolor most of those issues, and it needed to be recolored. So looking at subsequent volumes, there's less to recolor, but there's still stuff.
Yeah.
So it may come to a point where I'm just scanning in comics and trying to clean them up, which, I mean, the end of that book, that's what it was. The backup stories were all scanned in from comics and cleaned up. And it's all right. The nice thing about it is that it's exactly what saw print, and it's, really, really close to that. Whereas when somebody's trying to match it by looking at it, it's tough. Some of the colors in where they're recolored it, I was like, God, it's not as bold as it was. Some of the original color was just, the darks were darker, and the contrast was a lot more than it was. There were more K-tones in the original. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. If I'm scanning in comics and cleaning them up, then that'll happen. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, so I got my work cut out for me. I got a lot of stuff to do between these 100-page issue. What an idiot! But it's like, hey, remember Fantastic Comics? Here's 13 pages of Samson. You love him.
I don't think you ever reprinted those Tootsie issues. There's that.
Yeah, right. I'm scanning actual Captain Tootsie comics.
It's public domain, right?
Yeah, it's public domain. Yeah.
I didn't get all that Rex Dexter comic. I haven't scanned in all that. There's still plenty of Daredevil that's never seen.
There you go.
There you go.
I mean, at what point do you just go, yeah, no. We don't want that. So, yeah, I wish I had more super early unpublished Dragon comics, but a lot of that doesn't exist anymore. So there's only so much I can do.
What are you expecting, or what do you think in your head for when we'll see Ant return? I know we kind of closed out kind of the first chapter with issue 6.
Hopefully by the end of the year, but since I've got this 100-page issue and the second, whatever, I can never remember the name of those books. What are they? Ultimate? Is it Ultimate?
Ultimate Edition, Ultimate Collection.
That just doesn't roll off my tongue.
The Ultimate Collection.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, there it is. In all its beauty. I've got one here somewhere. I don't know. Oh, there's one way in the back. Oh, well. Yeah, and I've got the Invincible one, because I was like, it should look something like this, right? But then it went to something else entirely.
Well.
Anyway, yeah, so it just ends up being so much stuff that working on Ant is gonna going to be put aside for a little while I just put out these major fires, and then get back to it. But I'll probably just do Ant on the tablet, just because I think it's faster. And I wanted it to be inked with a dead line, and I can't I can't really do a dead line with real paper, because even like the Pentel rolling writer, which is what I've been using predominantly, it just ends up being thick and thin depending on how much you're pressing and how much you're not. I don't know. Maybe it's something I shouldn't concern myself with, but I do.
You got a really nice write-up in the Comics Journal, right? The one
Yeah,
that really
that
praised
weird?
your coloring. That was awesome. I think we all agree. Like, the coloring is phenomenal. It's not something that you see anymore in comics, and it's just kind of like really interesting.
Well, yeah, it's fun to do. I don't always think I'm great at it, and there's places in every issue where I go, oh, that was a bad choice. But whatever.
I think six in particular was
this
fantastic.
panel here, I'm just going, that guy is too dark. If he was a little lighter, you could actually see that was a person. But I mean, whatever. Most of the time, I'm all right with it. I'm glad I've worked knockouts into this, because I wasn't using knockouts in the first few issues very much. And suddenly the last couple, I'm like, screw it, I love knockouts. Let's just go to town on knockouts. So that's more fun.
Definitely. Go
ahead. No, you go.
All I was going to say is it definitely sets the book apart from other books. Like, there's tons of superhero comic books out there. This one's very experimental, loose, funky coloring, and it's just fun to look at. Yeah,
well, that was the notion. Was I had Dragon, which looks one way, and I just didn't want to have another book that you could go, oh, look, it's the same thing. It's just more of the same. So I like doing that style in that one issue of Savage Dragon a million years ago.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right, let's just try this out. I know it could go quick, but then I eat up all this time coloring it. So my coloring process is just so, okay, try this color out. Okay, that doesn't work. I'll try this color out. Okay, that doesn't work. I just don't have a formula really figured out. And then I'm having Mike do whatever you call this. What's supposed to do flats? Mm-hmm. But I'm having to do gray flats. So, because I didn't want to be influenced by his color choices.
That's awesome.
Okay.
So just the shading, the tone.
Yeah, it's just different things of gray. And every now and then he'll do some page and he'll be like, there was so much going on here that I couldn't find a different gray. So I made these guys yellow. I hope that's okay. But yeah, I really want just give me the shapes. I don't want to be sitting here going, oh, that's a cool color green. I guess I'll use that. Because I wanted to feel like, no, this is me coloring it. These are my choices. So that's what that was all about.
It's amazing. It keeps it interesting, I guess, for you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fun, and I enjoy coloring. It's kind of mindless but time consuming. So
it's a perfect description of it.
Right?
You can really zone the fuck out coloring something.
Yeah, you just there we go. But
yeah,
it's a lot of work.
That article was great, though. I'm glad that you got the credit for that. That somebody, outside of your fan community. I really, maybe this guy is one of your longtime fans. I don't know, but
every now and then a fan will become a person that's reviewing stuff, and it's like, all right, positive stuff. It's somebody who's not just bitching about stuff, whatever. Yeah, the guys who've decided I really want to hate you, so I'm going to go out of my way to find a reason to hate you, and then just harp on that forever. It's like, God, man.
Such a waste of energy.
It's such a waste of time and such a waste of energy. And they eventually find me on Facebook, and I immediately block them, and that's the end. You know, it's like, this is the life you've built around this. Okay, that's awesome.
Have you? God, Raven.
No,
sorry.
I was just gonna say they get that weird charge out of the interaction, and even if it's negative, like for them it's a victory. Even if it is negative, they'll be like, "Oh, I got blocked," and it's like, who gives a fuck? It took like two seconds.
That's winning to them. It's like, I was so right that he blocked me. So, I just don't want to coexist on the same planet, and I can make you disappear. So
right.
Yay.
Not a victory.
Yeah, it's like, this is how little you matter to me. You're gone.
Yeah. You find that since leaving Twitter, it's kind of been a better kind of choice for you, or
better? There's still weird spam things that show up on Facebook.
Yeah.
But, you know, and there's still guys on Facebook who are like, I want to say this one thing and I want to be angry and I'm just going to be a dick. But it's the same effect. Like, I'll block you and then you're gone forever. That was easy.
Right. I find that like Facebook, you kind of like are in your same little island. The good thing about Twitter is you can kind of reach out a little bit. More people can kind of pick up on what you're doing or stuff. But then you get the trolls and everything a lot more with that. Yeah, so it's kind of a catch.
It's so much worse as soon as Elon was in charge. Then it was like, let's let in everybody that's been kicked out. It's like, well, fuck, those guys are all assholes. And then now we're gonna and I'm not on there. I don't have some weird alternate name, but you know, if you get an email from something and they've got a Twitter, they're like, this guy said this about you on Twitter, and they link you. You can click on that, and suddenly you're looking at Twitter for a second. And it's every now and then I'm like, I should get on here just so I can correct all these people saying this stupid shit.
It's so annoying though. It's such a waste of your time.
Right? Yeah, and it's like I can't put out every one of those fires, and they grow exponentially.
I get like angry for you when people say things like, as a reader, and like I think I have good taste and I think your comic books are awesome and the greatest thing, but then you read some opinion that's completely opposite, and I get everyone has different opinions, but sometimes it's just like, you asshole, you don't even read it and this is what you think, and like then you get yourself like, I've had to stop myself, and I'm like, I can't even imagine being being the person actually is the one putting it down on paper and having to like deal with some of this, never mind just being a fan and listen to it. You know, it's like it's so unnecessary and just a waste of time. And
it absolutely is. Yeah, and all of it. It's just
you just tend to confuse the Twitter community with the community at large, and it's like, you know, most of your fan base probably is not even on Twitter.
and that's it exactly. It's like the online community is everybody thinks, oh, this stuff matters. You know, it's like the people getting outraged at whatever, J.K. Rowling or whatever. And you go, okay, well, how does that translate into the real world? Are people still going and seeing Harry Potter and reading Harry Potter books? And it's like, yeah, they are. You haven't done anything, really. I mean, there's a couple movies that came out that weren't as awesome as they ought to have been, and based on properties that aren't as successful. So I guess that has run its course. But this whole thing of, oh, people are they'll never show up again. It's like, no, they won't. I mean, comedians are still going out there and selling out arenas, and you didn't shut them out completely. It's very few people can actually be just drummed out of the business. It takes some doing to do that.
It's got to be. This is so perfect.
Yeah, so
We just naturally drifted into this zone. I thought we were going to have to force this. It's got to be so satisfying, though, to have watched Scott Adams fucking tweet his empire into fucking dirt. Like, just
yeah.
like,
Is that amazing? Is that the most amazing thing in the world? Is you just go, you had this career. You built this up. Nobody said, you know what we'd really like is your opinion on a YouTube channel where you can just rant. And I mean, it's like, you don't need to talk about your stepson committing suicide. You don't need to talk about, none of this shit needs to be aired at all. There's absolutely no reason for that. Yeah. And he's just like,
he can't help himself.
I can't help myself. I gotta do this.
He just kept going. And like he dodged the bullet like time and time again, and he just fucking kept going until he found that magic place. He said that magic thing, and then boom.
Magic thing, and then boom, there you go. It's like, yeah, we can't. It's to a point where we can't ignore it. We've got too many people. We've got to shut you down. We got 30 years out of you, and
now you're a crazy person.
But now you're gone.
Like a white Kanye West. You fucking can't keep your mouth shut. You're a goddamn maniac.
God, what are you doing? I don't know. I guess I don't probably have any of those kind of opinions that are so extreme that would get me and then have people just going down my throat, other than having to show vaginas in the reissue. I can do whatever I want. Okay, great.
It is amazing how upset like 40-year-old adults get at seeing nudity in comics. Sometimes it's like, really, you're that upset about this?
You wonder if they know their parents had sex. Like, you didn't just show up in an egg, Junior.
Yeah, what's going on here? I don't know. I mean, whatever. I can do what I want to do. I can do whatever I want. We'll see what happens. See. People get upset. I know Diamond was at one point going, if he keeps doing this, we're going to have to put this in the adult section.
Did they say that?
Yeah, at one point.
Wow.
And it's I had too much, in too many issues in a row. It was just like 228, then followed it with 229. It was like, oh, geez. So this is just going to be the way this book is now?
It's when you start having jizz in comics, then it gets body fluids. They start getting upset.
It's like, look, I'm not having. It's so it's so subdued what I've done. For the most part, it's just like it's so subtle that you can put that in like a comedy movie and people think it's hilarious.
That's what I said is like the cum scene or whatever. It's like almost the same kind of thing happened in Scary Movie. No one says Scary Movie is pornography. No one would be caught dead saying that. And yet it's been 6 years and you have people that still talk about that goddamn issue.
Well, also, I mean, you've got like that back of the panel gag of Guy and Deuter.
Oh, that was so annoying.
At the time, nobody paid any attention to it or even noticed what the hell was going on.
And tried to twist it.
And there was like worse shit has gone on in South Park. That was like way worse than that.
Yeah.
And these guys are trying, and there's like these online trolls like, oh, this is child pornography. It's like, well, first of all, you don't even know how old Guy and Deuter are. They've been in the comic for 20, 30 years.
They didn't really care. They were just trying to nail you for something.
So
yeah.
They weren't offended.
This provocative to you? Because it's not drawn remotely provocative.
They were just trying to like
no, it's like
cause some shit for you.
I want to be offended. What can I find? Oh, there's this.
Yep.
All right.
I feel like that was also headed by what's his name? The guy that did
Comicsgate.
No, one of the guys that did one of your miniseries, was it, what's his name? Miller?
Marcus Miller?
Yeah, he was like leading that. Like he went off the deep end.
He did.
That guy's a lunatic.
Yeah.
That guy is
So I think what you need to do is have a part 2 Savage Dragon Megaton Man, but instead have Don Simpson return as his Anton Drek persona, and do an erotic comic that's part Larsen, part Anton Drek, and that will really
that'll do it. That'll seal.
that'll
my
really
fate.
That'll show them. That'll show those bastards. It just blows my mind. Again, like, I'm sorry. We'll let it go. There's not much more to say on this, but it just cracks me up, all these moral orals that are just like, I can't show my nephew or my niece. And it's like, all right, every kid in the world has a goddamn cell phone, and every cell phone in the world's connected to the internet. If you don't think your fucking kids are aware of what the fuck's going on, you're dumb as shit. And number 2, it's like, again, just compare this to any other entertainment. I guarantee your kids are playing like fucking video games that have shit that's way more shocking than this. Photorealistic mutilation.
Yeah. And I mean, and on my end, if I'm like wanting to up the ante every time, it's like I reach a point where it's like, I don't really have anything else to say on this. So I gotta move on to other things, just because I thought it was a fun visual gag, but having those two having sex in panel, it's like we've already established that happens. From now on, it'll be, somebody being tugged into the other room. We don't necessarily need to see that at this point. Just unless I can come up with some really clever way of doing it that cracks me up, then it's like, all right, then I'll do it. That doesn't happen much.
Well, I think that's the charm of Savage Dragon. I feel like you have a whim, or you just follow whatever you like to do, and I think that's what's fun, and that's what's part of the charm of the book, is that there's no one telling you can't do something, and if you don't like the direction it's going on, wait 15, 20 issues, and it'll be going in a totally different direction.
Exactly.
Or he'll have a different career doing something else, or whatever it is. And that's what I love about the book, is that you keep it interesting for yourself.
I like that the one constant is it's still being done by the same dude. But other than that, like, the entire cast could change. And, and it's like, oh, here's a bunch of, we're getting all new villains starting with whatever issue it is. I can't have old villains showing up clear across the country in San Francisco. It just doesn't make any sense unless they're after revenge. If that's what they want, and they're just like, I just don't want this guy existing on the same planet as me, then it's like, all right, maybe that guy can show up. Like the villainess in Raven's story, she might show up again just because she's got nothing else going on in her life. That's all she's got is revenge. But
still,
I don't have too many characters that's all they've got.
Time to make some new ones.
There's one. Whatever. What can I do to piss people off?
It's inevitable.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering, like, what the reaction is going to be to the cover of them in San Francisco.
Oh, people are going to be pissed.
Liberal Larsen, look at this. Like, look at this, how people dress. This is how his characters are going to look. Like, that's going to be the reaction.
I don't like it all. It's like, what do you know? Why didn't he do something with that? I just thought it'd be a cool cover. So, like, here are the San Francisco cliches. Here are the characters dressing as I want to fit in, and this is how you dress to be here. And then once you're actually there, it's like, Oh, hardly anybody does this? Okay. I guess we'll dress like regular humans.
I think Raven called it when he was like, "Oh, did you see Erik was asking people like what they thought people in San Francisco dress like?" And it was like, "Oh, that's why he was asking once we saw the cover."
Yeah,
Just
and yeah, that's what I do. Every now and then, I have no other place where I can ask those kind of questions.
Wait, you also asked, like. You were kind of musing to yourself about what you could show on a cover that could be constituted as a spoiler. Was that about the San Francisco cover?
About spoiling them.
This is like, the problem with all covers is they're all spoilers.
Right. Every
single one. Because it's like, oh, I thought Malcolm was in danger, but I can see that 2 covers from now he's still on the cover, so he must be fine. Oh, I thought Maxine was dead, but here she is on this upcoming cover, so I guess she's all right. And that's the problem with every one of these is you end up, okay, so great. I guess if I did a cover that was just Malcolm's kids, people would be like, oh, did Malcolm die this issue? Maybe he's dead. It's his kids on the book. What's going on here?
I still prefer that than any type of like pinup cover, which drives me crazy. I hate those things.
Yeah, those are, like, who cares? Okay, I get you. Really, Dragon's going to be in this issue? Awesome. Look forward to it. I mean, the nice thing about them is just that you can do whatever the hell.
Right.
It's like when I had Paul Dragon show up, I didn't want to have him on the cover fighting Malcolm on the next issue, because it's like, well, that ruins the ending of 250 of Paul Dragon just being like, hey,
yeah, right.
If they're slugging it out, like the first, it was quite a few issues in until Paul was actually on the cover.
Yeah,
right?
you got to wait that like 4 cover.
Yeah,
get it through like previews so you don't
the
ruin
empty
it.
Grail, I think, was the first cover he was on.
Yeah.
This is actually just his second cover, isn't it?
The second, no, he was on 262 and 261, right?
Yeah, I don't even remember those.
261, he's breaking through the glass. Then
the Hornet's Nest, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's right. Those guys are hanging out together. They're buddies. That's true. Forgot about those. Goddamn vicious circle. Can we just be done with those guys? Yeah, I don't want to have anybody. I don't want to have that name uttered again. Vicious circle.
30 years of
going to show up. Oh, when are you going to bring him back, Overlord? Hey, when's Dragon coming back?
Jeez.
Really? You're going to have Dragon back? 60-year-old man?
We got Paul
yes,
for that.
I'm still fighting crime, damn it.
The people who ask
Paul's
that, they can't be. They got to be lapsed fans. They can't be readers. I don't know. It just seems like that's so different from what the book actually has to offer. Who was it who said? Somebody told me we were doing the daily reread, and the one guy's like, "Well, I was mad because this for me was when my ideal version of the book ended." And I was like, "You really wanted to like just read years and years and years of him as a cop?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You don't think that'd be boring eventually?"
Well, it's crazy. Like Malcolm's been the lead of the book almost for his like 75 issues, almost right at this point.
A long time,
or close to it. Like almost the first run of the Image.
Because I thought that he was the lead character before that. And then Eric Stevenson was like, you never really made it a point that he was the lead character. I was like, oh, I kind of thought he was. You should do a cover where he's the lead character. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do a cover where he's the lead character. But if I'm going to do that, I better do a couple issues that have the other dragon in it, just so
it feels like a transition.
Switch. So, which is why I ended up doing all that dragon in space crap. Because I got to show the other dragon doing something, so that when it turns back to Malcolm, like, all right. So like, when was I got to look at some covers here.
Malcolm was basically the main character since Dragon got his brains eaten, right?
That's how it felt to me.
But I was thinking
doing
of
the
like
reread.
I'm thinking of the cover where it's like the first issue in a brand new direction or whatever, like the Kirby pose cover.
Yeah, that's the one where it's like, okay, it's going to be real official for sure. But yeah, like what was it? Yeah, see, I got to go
190 something.
Look at all the covers because I don't remember all these covers off the top of my head. So lame.
Well, there is 265 of them, so
yeah, there's
190,
I
193.
can't remember like 3 covers back. Oh yeah, Paul Dragon was on a couple covers. Oh, shit.
193 was the first issue in A Bold New Direction.
193.
Yep. 193, but Malcolm. Yeah, like once. Pretty much since 150, it's been Malcolm's.
Yeah, 193 is where you change the logo, but
Yeah,
Malcolm's been predominant since like back in Blue.
But like Dragon dies again in 150, where Overlord blows him away,
right?
Yeah,
and then they have to put him back together again, and then Dragon's the Venom Dragon for a little while.
Yeah,
and
I guess 193 is just like he's out. Like it's like you said, it was just kind of like a clear signal, like this is Malcolm's book, and that's why I think of it that way.
But when there's all the Emperor Curse stuff, it's like Dragon's the bad guy in those.
Yeah,
right.
And the virus stuff where it was like that's not really Dragon.
Right.
It's like
it's a virus.
Then we get Malcolm and Wildstar and all that stuff. So I was like, this is Malcolm's book, and then Erik's like, dude, like, all right.
I see it was a good call, at least for like sales or trying to bring in some more readers to the book.
I mean, it's like, let's give him his own, Malcolm oriented logo and do that Letterman style logo for a little while. And then eventually it's like, all right, I got to give him his real logo back.
It's always cool though that he got feels like real comics, like he got a different logo for a period. I mean, it is real comics, but it feels like old school comics, like where, all right, we're gonna give Hulk this different logo with Thor or whatever, but then we're gonna go back or.
Yeah, I mean, and then doing the Welcome to Toronto, and now I'm doing the Welcome to San Francisco. Be able to kind of do that as a recurring theme there.
The other thing that blew my mind as I was kind of researching and looking up things to talk to you about is that the kids are like, I think they're 6 or 7 now, which is I think the same age as Malcolm on the 101 cover where he's like kicking max damage in the nuts or something. I forget what the cover is him kicking max damage, but it was like, to me, felt like the kind of first, like, Malcolm was kind of out of the picture, and then it's like, oh, now he's like becoming part of the book as a character, and it's like, wow, this is the same age as like the kids are now. And it's like, it's just hard to believe that they're already that age.
Almost 8. They'll be 8 in September.
Yeah, so, and it's like that's like,
and Maddie starts kindergarten in September.
Oh, no.
So they were sitting there going, oh, if we're going to move, we should move, so that Maddie's starting a new school with new kids and blah, blah, blah. So she's starting fresh.
It's just that the kids are looking like purple flannel Malcolm now. They're getting to that age. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. And then now it's like, okay, we got to start working on those personalities a little more, so we get a little more of a sense of, okay, well, who's Jackson as opposed to what's Tyrone, what's he into, what's he all about, and all this other stuff get there.
They're like Ninja Turtles.
Well, right now, it's sort of like Amy's the only one who really stands out as her own person.
Yeah, she's like the leader.
She's kind of distinguished herself by befriending a giant tiger.
She's pretty fearless.
You've given Tyrone some moments where he seems to be mechanically inclined.
Yeah, he's a little more of that. And then, I can't talk about Jackson because that issue's not out yet. But he starts going off in his own mode.
Cool. It would be really cool to see.
And Maddie's lightning powers. So
yeah, Maddie has lightning powers. So basically, what I wanted to be able to have a girl dragon that was beefy like Malcolm and a girl dragon that was skinny like Maxine.
Oh, that's cool.
Later days. So like when they flourish eventually and become their own, something, then it's like, all right, can be a real visual distinction.
That's awesome. Now all we need is Fonty to sprinkle some magic dust and make him grow up real fast in 2 issues. No, I'm just kidding.
It's such a cheating thing. Just like, let's do this.
Toss them into Dimension X for 10 years. We'll get back to them when they're adults.
Yeah, that was another, like, just me being a lazy guy. Like, I don't want to do that long, difficult raising children thing. So let me just sidestep that by doing this little sleight of hand.
We've got Michael Jackson's son in there too, or someone's hand came up out of that grave that could possibly another dragon child in Dimension X.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Lorella's got a whole gaggle of them.
Oh, that's true.
Europe
too.
Or somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, but none of those guys have powers. Those are
yeah,
they're all just regular Krylons.
Boy. Well, I think we said it all. Unless you guys have some more.
I think we've been going.
We
for
took a lot of your time.
Almost 3 hours. So this was one of our epic interviews.
Yeah,
I can't wait for
did
that
not
dinner
feel
bell.
like 3 hours.
A dinner bill never came.
Yeah.
This never happens.
Yeah,
we never beat the dinner bell.
Yeah, that's it. I think she may just be like, you told me you're on a podcast. You told me you guys go for a while, so you can just come out and all dinner.
Well, we apologize if you missed dinner, but
whatever.
Dear
It's
listeners,
always-
we could see him getting weaker. Famished.
What am I doing here?
Less hand
Yeah,
gestation.
there's still, I still love making comics. I still love having comics. I still like the ideas of I may not know what I'm going to do next issue, but I know what I'm doing, 10 years down the road and where I want some of these characters to be at that point. So there's a lot of that that's definitely there.
It's cool.
So
It's just cool to see somebody who's been doing it for so long remain passionate, and it's just cool to see you highlight like new talents like Simon, and still experiment in new ways. Like when we flip through 264, it just feels fresh and exciting. And I mean, I don't know, it's fucking crazy that you're just still kicking the ass of people who are just getting started. I'm just like, these new guys should have fresh blood in their veins. Like they should be kicking your ass. But you're kicking their ass.
What bothers me more is the writing end of comics, where people are like, let's do this as a 6-part story. That drives me up the wall. And in some ways, Savage Dragon and older comics have ruined new comics for me. Because I'm just like, what did they do? What did they do this issue? Oh, they went from here to here? What the hell's that? That's nothing. I just told 30 years of somebody's backstory in one time. Like, Jesus, man, get somewhere. What are you even doing? I like that. I have that pressure all the time of, you got to cover a month's worth of material. What goes on in this month, or just have there be huge spaces of time where nothing happens, essentially. Which, now that all the Vicious Circle guys have been rounded up, that's sort of how Toronto's become. And there's nothing much for me to do here.
Right.
So let's move on to
another supervillain hotspot.
Yeah.
Let's make this into something. Have the Bay Guardian show up again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hope he's the first one Youngblood recruits.
Yeah.
It is really exciting. Like, we were really bummed with last year not getting much, but after these first 2 issues this year, it's like, I feel like, I don't know, like you haven't missed a beat. They've been some of the funnest comics to read. We thoroughly enjoy them. We sit here and we just talk our asses off about them, especially the last issue. We had so much to say and talk. Like, it's funny, you read a book, you read it twice, and then when you sit down with a couple of friends and chat about it, and it's like all the things we can pick out and enjoy and read, and read between the lines, or Easter eggs or whatever it is. It's like,
what is this? What's going on here?
So good. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for making the best damn funny book on the shelf for 30 years.
I'm going to make some more. I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
I just got to get over that 300. I just want to get on to 301 and 302.
Then the pressure will be off. And you can actually start making comics.
Yeah. As soon as I'm past 300, then it's like, okay. So how many are we now? It's like, it doesn't even matter, man.
All right.
Then you're gonna want to hit all those milestones that you hit on Amazing Spider-Man, and 330 is gonna, and then
don't plant those seeds.
Yeah, just to get to 287, which was my first Spider-Man. I'm doing the first one when I was doing Spider-Man. I got to get Walt Simonson to do me a 337 cover that I could just sit there. Yeah. And like, all right, here we go. You better be alive, you son of a bitch. So, all right. Yeah,
well,
I know.
Yeah.
There's stuff I'm just itching to get to. So
we can't wait.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for being so free with your time and indulging us. Hopefully,
thanks for having me, guys.
See you again, maybe in the 6 issues or something like that, and do it
whatever.
all over again.
It doesn't need to be a huge gap. If you guys are like, let's make this happen. I'm fine chatting with you guys. So anytime you want to do it.
Sounds good. I appreciate that.
Cool.
All right. Well, go eat your cold dinner.
Yeah.
All right. Look forward.
Ding-a-ding.
Later, guys.
See ya.
Bye.